Hey, Smid. You're muted.
You want me to let everyone in?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Just before we get started, though, can you make me co-host?
Yeah. Second. It just says make host. Is that it?
Doesn't give you an option to make co-host?
I don't think so.
That's a shame. Okay. Why don't you...
It's okay though. I'll just make you host up here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Cool. That works. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, Nidhi, you're also host, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Perfect
Good.
then.
All right. You and I are going to be hosts then.
Who and who?
You and I.
You
Just
and
so
Aaron.
we can mute anybody if things get out of hand.
Sounds good. Did you see the question I just sent you as well? I just got it on Instagram.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
I can add that to the document.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nidhi, you can let people in, right?
I can. There's no one here, but I can.
There's a bunch of people there.
Oh,
There's
then it says that you're host, so I think you have to do it. I don't
Okay,
think I can.
Cool. All right. I will let everyone in then.
Aaron, do you have an option that says make co-host?
Let's see.
As far as I understand, only one person can actually be host on the call at once.
Yeah.
So even though technically we're co-hosts, I don't think you can do that.
No, I'm just wondering because where does the recording go? That's what I'm trying to wonder.
Oh, that's a good point.
I think to me, right? Because I made the Zoom link.
Okay, then probably you then. Yeah, it would go to you then.
You would think. Either way, it's going to go to one of us. So we'll figure
okay.
it out. All right.
And Aaron, can you also put in the comment section or just tell people that if they have any anonymous question, just to message you directly then? Because I know people are messaging me to message you directly about like some questions that they don't want their names to be put out there.
Yeah, I think you can only message
the host.
The host, so they can message you. Yeah.
And then you can message everyone else. Yeah, so that everyone know that like any anonymous questions, just send it to me.
Yep, that works. All right. If you guys are good, I'll let everyone in then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
My room is way messier than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm. All right, welcome everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We'll give everybody an opportunity to get in, get situated. Just so everyone who is joining us is aware, we are screen recording this. So if you don't feel comfortable having your face being shown in a recording later, feel free to turn off your video. No worries at all.
Hey there, Aaron. Can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine. Joseph, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Knowing what happened last week, though, I've got my phone on standby just in case.
Always good to have a backup, but you sound okay for the time being, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Just keep an eye on your messages, Joey. If there's a problem, we'll just message you on Zoom chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if that be the case, Samid, just so that I can see it right in the moment, would you mind putting it in the Zoom chat?
Yeah, we'll let you know.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
I was going to send it to you, but it's not showing up for me. I don't know if it's because I didn't start the meeting or what it is. But Samid, can you check the Zoom to see if like the number shows up for you? and then you can send that over because I don't have it.
You don't have what?
1 second.
You know, when you make a Zoom link, there's a section where it will provide you with the phone number. So last time it did that, but this time I think because I wasn't the one that started the call, it's no longer giving me that information. So like
Yeah,
when
just
I
put it
open
in the. I just put it in the chat. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Canada would be the 647 number.
Yep. Perfect. Now for our candidates, if you wouldn't mind, for the sake of accessibility, if you could just put either president or presidential candidate in your name, just so that everybody who's attending knows who will be speaking today. All right, I will give you guys 1 more minute. Let anyone else who is waiting to come in or might be a few minutes late to get in before we get started. Welcome everybody to today's first presidential debate. I'm glad to have you all here. My name is Aaron. I am the president at Wilfrid Laurier University Student Publications. I'm going to be helping out with the moderating for today and the rest of the events for the SU during their election season. It is my pleasure to be doing this for the second time. Love getting the chance to interact with all of you, and I'm excited for today's events. So it's almost 4:05. We're going to get started. Another reminder for anyone who's joining us, we're doing screen recordings. If you're not comfortable with that, feel free to turn off your video. It's totally fine. Ground rules for today's event. Candidates Pega and Joseph. We want to have a civil and professional and healthy debate. So I will be doing my best to both ensure that you guys get equal opportunity to speak and respond to each other, but we will make sure that we keep things professional and civil to the best of our abilities and make sure nothing escalates to an extent that it does not need to. So I'm sure you'll both be keeping that in mind as you are answering. Just make sure that we are respectful of each other and we shouldn't have any problems. So we are going to get started. It is 4:05. Officially welcome everybody who is joining us today. Thank you very much. Let me introduce my candidates as well, our presidential candidates, Pega Jamiloff and Joseph Smalls. We are going to be beginning today's debate with some opening statements, some opening remarks from each candidate. I will be giving you each 5 minutes. Feel free to use as much or as little of that time as possible. The way today's debate is going to work, we're going to have 3 sections. We're going to start off with a couple icebreakers, get things smooth, get ourselves relaxed. Debates can be kind of stressful. We want to have a good time while we're here. So we're going to start off with some fun questions. Then we are going to be going into a Q&A period. The first round of Q&A will just be straight Q&A. We're not going to have any debates. You'll both have the opportunity to answer these questions equally. The second round will be more debate-focused questions where I will give a candidate an opportunity to answer. Then the opposite candidate will have the opportunity to rebut, and it will finish off with a final rebuttal by the original candidate. It's probably going to be about 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute as far as timing goes. So about 5 minutes per candidate per question. We have a fairly lengthy amount of time today set aside, so we shouldn't have any issues. We're probably going to take a little bit of a break in between if it starts getting too long, just so you guys have a chance to, get up, stretch, grab a drink or something, and just have a little bit of break before we continue. And then we will finish off with some audience and online submitted questions. I have a ton that have been sent in. Thank you to everybody who has been doing so. We really appreciate it. Helps make this a nice, lively, engaged event. So we can get started. We're going to begin with opening introductions. And this time we will let Pega go first. So Pega, whenever you're ready, you can begin with your opening remarks.
Hi, I'm Pega Jamiloff. I'm a 4th-year student here at the Waterloo campus. I am a political science major and a sociology major as well. I am a member of the Board of Governors and the Senate here at Laurier. So a lot of my job currently is working with administration for academics and finance. I find that these are all great roles that I have that will give me the right insights to be the SU president. and a large part of my platform is dedicated to mental health initiatives and sustainability. That being said, I'm also running a virtual 5K, which is for CAMH, and CAMH is the Center of Addiction and Mental Health Resources. I decided to do this because I have such a large following of young individuals who can utilize the resources CAMH offers, but also to end the stigma that talking about mental health is something that is considered taboo. This will be going on January 26th, and I hope that anyone who wants to participate can find more information on my Instagram at votepj2021 or on my website www.votepj2021.com. And other than that, I'm just going to keep it brief, so I'll let Joey take over.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Opening remarks from our first candidate, and now we will be hearing opening remarks from Joseph as well. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Aaron, and thanks to you, Pega, for a great introduction there. Folks, I'd actually like to give another shout out to Pega as part of my opening remarks today, and I want to cite her words that she mentioned in one of last week's open forums. She said to some effect that this campaign is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I think any good marathon runner understands that the energy of the participants and the crowd are pretty crucial in enduring what can be a grueling and challenging long race. Knowing that Pega has had a fantastic opening week to help us understand the ins and outs of student union election, marketing, get some good promotional materials up on board, folks will have noticed, and my inbox is full of people who said that my presence has been conspicuously lacking this past week. And so that's where I want to take a moment to say right now that the social media platform pages have now been made online accessible. What I'm doing is attempting to conserve the energy of both myself, Pega, and you, the audience who tune into this. Student Union has had a, should we say, disappointing and it's become increasingly clear to me, based on the voter turnout was up until last year, averaged about 22% of eligible students. That hit its nadir last year when it's 6% of eligible voters who could have voted for their president did. Effectively, the president was elected by roughly 5% of the eligible electorate of the student union. And that's where I recognize that something is not right. An unorthodox year calls for an unorthodox strategy. And that's what I'm bringing to the table this year. Familiar face with a new rule book. And as you'll see as this debate goes on, I like to make my complex plan of exciting new vision with familiar faces and amicable open strategy much, much clearer to all of you.
Thank you very much for those opening remarks, Joseph. Unfortunately, you were cutting in and out again. You were having the same audio issues. So if you wouldn't mind calling in with your mobile device, that would be great. Sorry about that.
I hope you don't mind if I do just take 2 minutes to get going.
No worries. We're going to take just a quick 2-minute break just so that Joseph can get the technical issues sorted out. And we'll be right back.
Feel free to share some jokes or something, liven things up. Okay, that's calling now.
going to take this opportunity to remind everyone when we do get to the Q&A portion of today's debate, feel free to do the hand raise if you want to ask a question, and you can unmute yourself. Or if you don't feel comfortable asking a question yourself, you can either type a question in the chat publicly, or you can send a message directly to myself, moderator Aaron. You should be able to do that. Good. Looks like Joseph is now in. You want to test it out?
Can you hear me, Aaron?
Little bit quiet.
How about now?
It's okay for me, but it might be a little too quiet for the other participants.
Why don't you try using your headphones in your laptop?
Good point. It's Bluetooth. Hang on, I'm going to need to unplug that.
Because I think the issues with your microphone in your laptop.
Might be the case.
So what I've done right now is I've connected through the Bluetooth on my cell phone, not through the laptop.
Sounds okay. Do you want to give it another test?
Sure. Test. 1, 2, 3. Test.
Yep. Sounds good. A little bit of an echo, but otherwise okay.
There we go.
All right. Good.
Let's run with this and see what happens.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you very much. All right. We are going to resume with some of the questions. Now, as far as some icebreaker questions go, we're going to get started off with a personal favorite. So, obviously each year, presidential candidates get the opportunity to make a presidential meal, presidential dish. That dish they work with our on-campus bar and restaurant, Wilf's, to create something that reflects them and reflects their personality, their presidency. Students get to enjoy it. They get to eat it. They get to vote on what they think is their favorite. It's always lots of fun. We have a good time. Obviously this year, we didn't have that same opportunity, but it's important to ask the question. If you guys had the opportunity to create your own presidential dish, something that you think reflected you or that you may want to share with the student body at large, if you had the opportunity to do that, what do you think your presidential dish might have been? We will start this time with Joseph.
Sure. So I'm going to be very honest with you, Aaron. I had planned out what a presidential meal for me might be long before I considered what a presidential campaign might be. So my plan has not changed in all the time that it's been that. So I think a pretty good meal to capture the essence of Joey would have to be just a classic bangers and mash. Simple, no frills, good proper pub grub, stereotypically British, I'm a bit of a walking stereotype, I suppose, but good solid meal. You know what you're getting, no fuss, and pretty darn cheap too, all things considered. Good budget meal. Mashed potatoes, sausages, maybe throwing a little spin dip or pesto on the side. Beautiful.
Wonderful answer. Nice, strong, hearty, comforting meal. Good. Peggy, same question to you. What do you think your presidential dish might have been, your presidential meal?
So I had not thought about it. I've seen all of these presidents with their meals, and I didn't know that they actually chose them. But one thing that I definitely think would be a really cool idea. I love wings. It was one of my first meals at Wilf's with one of my best friends, and just like maybe with a side of like celery sticks and carrot sticks, just to maintain health. But yeah, something simple like that.
Of course, got to be healthy. Now, do you have a favorite wing flavor that you think you might make the centerpiece of your wing dish?
I personally just don't like spicy food, so anything that doesn't have spice to it.
Sure. Something nice and simple. We'd love to see it. Something accessible. Good. Awesome. Good. Next icebreaker question. We want to keep this event positive. We want to keep it uplifting. We want to remember that at the end of the day, even though we are campaigning against each other, we are all doing this because, we love the SU, we love Laurier, we love student life, and we all want to make this university a better place. So Candidates, what is something that you admire or appreciate about your opponent? Joseph, you can go first.
Aaron, being very honest, I have to appreciate Pega's tenacity and dedication for this role. I don't know if many people know this, but I found out when I found out Pega was going to run for the presidency back in fall, I reached out to her over Facebook just to establish contact, touch base, and hopefully set a pleasant tone, just to try and avoid any potential tension there might have been if we'd never met before. And honestly, Pega's openness and willing to chat really set a good, strong first impression for me. I asked her questions about the role and her comfort about it, and she's willing to, she's demonstrated a very good ability to overcome what might be a lack of experience with the student union itself, to emphasize her governance experience with the Board of Governors, of which I can very well relate, and the Senate, which admittedly I never dabbled with. So knowing that she doubles down on those hands-on experiences she does have, it's a very, very good mark of a president.
Very nice answer. Thank you, Joseph. Same to you, Pega. What about your opponent do you admire or appreciate?
Yeah, so he's a great storyteller. I love his anecdotes, and he's a great orator, and the accent definitely does him some favors. On top of that, I mean, he's had some experience with the SU, so that's great for a candidate. I won't disagree with that. He's had a lot of experience here in his years. And he is, I would say, very, very bright. He knows, he understands all his platforms. He seems to be pretty well researched. And I can't say that there's anything negative about knowing his points, like very well studied.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear it, guys. We love some healthy competition. So thank you for that. Next question. Obviously, I think a lot of people would probably say that the bulk of their student experience and the bulk of their positive memories has been formed and cultivated throughout their time at Laurier based on, some of the things they've gotten involved in. It tends to, circle around stuff that they decided to do, get involved in. So with that being said, what would you guys say is one of your fondest or strongest memories from your time at Laurier as a Golden Hawk? We can start with either candidate if they would like to go first. It's a strong or positive memory that stands out from you during your time here. Why don't we start with Pega this time?
Okay, so I was just thinking strong memory would be definitely pulling up to residence. I was in Conrad and having all the Icebreakers sing to me this version of Happy Birthday that I'd never heard. I was not prepared. None of my friends had told me that that was a thing. So I was like embarrassed, but also like super excited to be a part of this. So that was definitely something that resonates with me.
For sure. Good memory. And Joseph?
I was taken back to my own first year experience back in 15 Mar, Two Bridge Gang. The experience was fantastic in that it made me a pretty quiet, shy nerd when I came into an even louder nerd today, I suppose. But hearing Pega mention those Conrad experiences takes me right back to my own time when I was a resident education advisor for Conrad. That year in our annual Hawk Weekend celebrations, I was incredibly pleased to be a part of the Conrad team when we placed second overall in the Hawk Weekend competitions. A lot of people would say, oh, but second isn't first. But I would say to have been there in that moment, to have seen the sheer amount of joy and energy coming from everyone in the gymnasium when to know they got second place in such a grand competition, a great show of unity among all the residences, it has been undoubtedly one of the highlights of my Laurier career. There's something about Conrad.
Absolutely. Strong answers, candidates. Now, as potential president-elects, you'll obviously be expected to represent the Laurier undergraduate student body, represent their voices and their concerns, their hopes and their dreams. And I know there are going to be a lot of incoming first years next year who are going to be coming to university. They're going to be, they're going to be a little nervous. They're going to be a little concerned, a little worried about what might come, especially with the year that we've had. So what do you think you might say to incoming first years if you had the opportunity to? We'll start with Joseph this time.
Sure. Aaron, it's tough. Like, knowing that you've been dealt a bad hand before you even touch ground on campus is not a good start for any first year. Knowing that you could very well be robbed unintentionally just because of bad timing, not by the university, of course. It's, of course, the lockdown situation is understandable, but knowing that you've been robbed by sheer bad timing of a chance to enjoy one of the best and most formative experiences that Laurier has to offer, the O-Week experience, is something that hits me when I realize just how sad it is that an entire cohort has already missed out on that in-person opportunity. And so with that sympathy guiding my approach, Aaron, I'd reach out to them and let them know that even though next fall's O-Week may not bring us a whole lot of explicit optimism and the kind of energy that so many of us have taken for granted, I want to make it very clear that there are still amazing opportunities to get involved, regardless of what level you're in. It's always concerned me, Aaron, that first years always find it tricky to engage in both the political process and the club's associations in Laurier because they feel that they need that year of experience to both get settled and to figure out their place and where to find things. And I understand if students need to take things at their own pace, I encourage them to do so. But for those students who know they want to hit the ground running, get involved with student politics and the union, wind up being an icebreaker by the end of O-Week, then that is the kind of student that I want to cherish, and I want to provide with as many opportunities as they can to feed that interest over the year. That's where clear communication has been one of the vanguards of my platform. It's why the renovated Purge and the centralized online hub have been so important to me. Getting these young students involved and engaged right from the get-go is going to be so important next year, Aaron. No president, myself or Pega, can let that slip.
Wonderful answer. Thank you. Same question to you, Pega. What would you say to incoming first years if given the opportunity?
So I come from a pretty optimistic standpoint. Not that I'm making any promises, but what I'd like to say is, first semester might be online, but winter semester, we have no idea. Could potentially be, it's looking pretty good. On top of that, we have so many great resources here at Laurier. For example, if you think of the clubs and associations, he mentioned the Perch, now the Nest, getting traction on that, marketing that to the first years. Yeah, maybe we have online O-Week, but I think that we've done a great job. We can change a little bit of the programming there so students feel a sense of welcoming here at this community. And yes, it's hard, but throughout your experience at Laurier, this is a short period of time and you will gain so much. And it is unprecedented and that sucks, but know that the SU now has had 1 year of experience so that we can really build on it, find our strengths and weaknesses and really push those forward.
Wonderful answers. Thank you, candidates. Now we are going to move into our Q&A period. We're going to try and keep these a little bit more structured so that we don't run on time too much. So I'll give you guys a maximum of 2 minutes for your answers. These are not the debate questions, so there will be no rebuttals as of yet. These are just going to be straightforward. So we will be beginning with Pega, and then we'll be going to Joseph. The first question is, what role do you believe the students' union serves, and how do you believe it affects or impacts the student experience?
Yeah, so that's a huge question, and that was something that we came into this campaign knowing that a lot of students aren't exactly aware of the SU's role and how it affects almost everything in your experience at Laurier. Students don't know that a lot of clubs and programming is either through the SU or the SU has some oversight in it. On top of that, the SU also has so many great programs that students aren't necessarily aware of, such as foot patrol. If they are aware, they don't necessarily utilize it too much. So those are all things that we've discussed on how to market it. Marketing, I think, is one of the biggest things that we can work on to make sure that especially first-year students are understanding it. Going back to the SU's role, it's advocacy, organization, having volunteers and having students get involved, is creating employment at the university. And I think that they've done a great job. I just find that the one thing we can really, really hammer down on is making sure students are aware of what the SU does and how we can get them involved in it so that it's not oriented just to a certain group of individuals who want to get involved, but everyone knows.
Good, thank you. Joseph, same question to you. What role do you believe the Students' Union serves, and how do you think it affects or impacts the student experience as a whole?
Sure. I mean, let's take a little more to the straight and narrow on this question, Aaron. The Student Union, as per the constitution of the organization, exists to serve 4 prime purposes: providing a high-quality academic experience, a safe, sustaining, empowering environment for students, diverse and inclusive interactions for students, and products and services that cater to students' financial needs. If you want to get as cut and dry as you want, that's the answer to the question, what is the union's purpose? If you want to get a little deeper, if you want to understand its on-the-ground responsibilities, it exists to create a culture and a community for students that want to meet like-minded people. It exists to feed the interests and the niches that all of us aim to explore and develop over our very brief time at Laurier. Whether or not we know it, there's so much behind-the-scenes work that the union provides, funding faculty associations and individual clubs and associations, making sure that core programming like O-Week, Icebreakers, Bridging the Gap, Eco-Hawks, Foot Patrol, A-Team are all able to maintain their core operational capacity. I see next year as definitely a challenge to that status quo. And certainly President Kelly has done an amazing job of adapting the union's operations and strategic vision to adapt to a rapidly changing and uncertain future. But if you want to get down to basics, Aaron, it comes down to those 4 ends and the pursuit of an inclusive and welcoming culture and a community for keen students. That is what I am there to steward and to guide and support as a potential president.
Thank you very much, candidates. Now, on to the next question. Transparency, it's a topic that is extremely important to the role of the president. So what is your definition of transparency, and how do you plan on being accountable and transparent to students? We will start with Pega.
Yeah, so transparency is a huge problem that a lot of students have mentioned. And I think that it's not that it's anybody's fault that it hasn't been, that the SU hasn't been transparent, but I think it's rather that the marketing of the transparency is not there. So I think that communication is a huge issue that we find here at Laurier. Transparency to me is defined as having the students, in this instance, understand what the SU is doing, what their goals are, and how they're going about it. I know that there's obviously some issues there, but I find that a few people have mentioned monthly updates. I find that to be a great idea. I would love to implement that, but I'm also going to be realistic with how we can make sure that we're also promoting the great things that we're doing maybe the day of. And I think that really comes from a place of having an active social media following. I find that Instagram has been a large part of my campaign because it's just what our demographic is enticed to utilize. So I think that having Instagram updates is one of the biggest things that we can do. We already have a Your Students Union Instagram, utilizing that more as to exactly what we're doing on either a daily basis, a weekly basis, or when we have a goal that we've been working towards implemented.
Thank you, candidate, for your answer. Joseph, same question to you.
Sure. If you want my honest opinion, Aaron, transparency is one of those buzzwords that's been thrown around by presidential candidates for the last 5 years of elections and counting. If you want to achieve something that's close to transparency or open communication from the union, you don't go out looking for it. You achieve it along the way. It's one of those things like greatness. If you go out setting yourself out to be a great person with no feasible action plan, you are not going to find it anytime soon. Transparency is one of those things that's achieved along the way. It's not the end goal. It's a state of progress. And I aim to get there and accomplish that, not as a clear and rational end goal, but as a consequence of my clear action plan. Small steps along the way, like the centralized online hub, like the Perch 2.0, the Nest, however much we'd like to develop that. The monthly presidential updates that I'd like to see renewed, and the checklists that Tariq Plummer used to great effect. Those are the small steps that we take along the way to achieve a satisfying conclusion. Transparency is just something we achieve along the way. It's a great strategic buzzword, but it should never just remain that. It needs actionable items attached to it.
Thank you very much, candidates. Strong answers. Another area of preparing for this campaign, preparation is very important. So in preparation for your role and in seeking the candidacy, who from the Students' Union or the university did you meet with? And how did this affect the construction of your platform? So we will begin with Pega.
Okay, so it's a long list. I can't even remember all the names, but we met with a huge group of different bodies, from clubs and associations leaders to professors. I even spoke to a few of my own. I obviously met with Phil, who is the full-time staff. We met with, I believe, wellness, the dean of students. There was just a large group of different individuals. Obviously, we really wanted to meet with the sustainability office. However, they don't have a manager currently. But Phil and the assistant role were able to give us insights as to what they're able to accomplish. So one thing that I really got from that interaction was what was actually plausible, because I didn't want to come into this with these grand ideas. I wanted to make sure that all our ideas were things that we could actually accomplish in the 365 days in office. And so I found that a lot of my sustainability goals, my mental health goals, were all things that we could use. On top of that, when we reached out to wellness and different administrative bodies, we were made aware that there's a lot of resources that we just weren't aware of as students. Especially mental health resources. So that kind of changed the tune of my mental health initiatives, not only to try to work alongside groups like Safe Talk and BetterHelp, but also work alongside wellness to advocate for the resources already available to students. And that's kind of where I got the idea for the WebBot, the website, to make sure students have a resource that they can go to really understand what they can already get for free or subsidized.
Thank you very much. Joseph, same question to you.
All right. So rather than seeking a lot of contemporary sources in preparation for the campaign, Aaron, I sought out a lot of tried and true experienced members of both former union alumni, faculty executives, university administrators, representatives from lots of different associations around campus. Bear in mind that the current state of my platform emphasizes that I'm going to be a candidate for all students, Aaron. And to fulfill that end, I sought out to speak with students from every different cohort currently at Laurier across both campuses. I spoke to representatives from Greek life, members of Alpha Phi, Alpha Omega, Sigma Chi, Pike, Zeta. I've spoken to Greek life, I've spoken to members of athletics, the faculty associations, AUS, FOMSA, FOSSA, LASOC, Faculty of Education over in Brentford. Brentford, folks, I have talked to them to try and understand the Brentford experience. And I can say it's one of those things you have to live to truly understand it. Getting a crab meat sandwich from Admiral's is just not going to cut it. It's an experience at Brentford. And so that's what I've aimed to deliver. I've spoken to the university executives, of course, that can't be understated, to develop my most ambitious promises, though. I sat down for coffee a few times with now former VP Student Affairs Dave McMurray, Wellness Coordinator for the Student Wellness Center Heather Landells, who is an absolutely lovely person, and I'd recommend getting coffee with her anytime you find the time. They were the ones who explained the university's circle of care model to me and helped me understand the difference between helping students accommodate physical health needs, mental health needs, and social health needs. It's an incredibly complex dynamic. Not to mention the union president I met up with. I don't know exactly how many people in the audience are going to recognize the name Michael O'Nabalu, but I've spoken to a very long string of union presidents who've come and gone over the years to understand exactly what they could and could not accomplish in their time, and how I can ensure that not only are my promises able to uphold the ends of the organization, but are also doable in that time. Feasibility is a huge thing. And knowing that these presidents have seen plenty of unicorn promises in their own time, the promises that sound great on paper, knowing that they've seen plenty of those in their time, I am making sure that I steer well clear of those and making sure that I'm following their examples to achieve small, realistic, albeit ambitious actions.
Thank you, candidates, for your answers. The next question is about advocacy, current and future. So, candidates, what are some of the Students' Union's current advocacy priorities? And what are your plans for representing the needs and desires and advocating on behalf of Laurier students as a whole? We can start with Pega.
So I know that there's a lot of different initiatives right now by just individuals on the SU, such as the healthcare initiatives, referendum policies. Those are all technically advocacy. Another large part of advocacy that I have actually had full experience with was the SU and the Senate, the student senators working alongside one another with this lockdown browser issue, and then settling on the credit system for the moment being. I know that that's still a huge part of their platform and what their, not their platform, their agenda. And I find that that's something that, if not completed in their term, given that there's only a few months left, something that I can take over, especially with my experience on the Senate.
Thank you very much. Joseph, same question to you.
All right. In terms of current advocacy initiatives, Peg has mentioned a lot of the big ones. One of the ones that I picked up on through some research into USA's initiatives, and the University Affairs Department in particular, was one of the big strategic ends that they've been looking forward to for a while, was developing tenants' rights across Kitchener-Waterloo. It's been a big item for the union for a while, and up until the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, when there were considerably fewer tenants in Waterloo to advocate for, it was still a major priority and a driving concern to ensure that students weren't left out in the lurch by bad contracts, by malicious landlords and lessors. So understanding that the dynamic of tenants' rights advocacy has changed since the lockdown began, I'd like to better understand what progress has been made to ensure that those students who are still living in Waterloo and will still be living in Waterloo when the COVID pandemic is alleviated, make sure that they are returning to housing units and residences that are accommodating, affordable, and they can ensure are healthy environments where they can worry just about the stresses of normal academic life without having to worry about the landlord constantly on their ass. It's not something any student should have to deal with, and yet far too many do. That's why I have to applaud the University Affairs Department for their work in that regard.
Thank you very much, candidates, for your answers. It seems like we are getting quite a number of questions. Thank you to everybody who has been submitting them so far. We may allow for some more time for the question and answer period for audience questions. So I will make sure I am going through the rest of mine quickly. The next question is related to voter turnout and the student union elections. I know, candidates, you spoke a little bit to it during your opening remarks. As some of you may know, last year, voter turnout in the students union election was 6.8%. Compared to the year before, voter turnout was closer to 23%. And in years past, it has been approximately close to that value. So because of this concerning drop in the last year and the uncertainty of what will happen this year because of everything that is going on, what is your plan for increasing voter interest and turnout in the next students union election? Now, I'm going to preface most of these questions coming up. You will most likely want to answer in two scenarios. One, if things continue relatively similar to this year, and two, if things improve, open up, or we are operating in a more increased capacity overall. So with that being said, candidate Pega, you may begin. What is your plan for increasing voter interest and turnout in the next election?
So in this current election, from, I'm guessing, was that your question, or was it more towards next year?
You can also speak to this election, but it's a little bit more difficult because you don't have quite the authority that the current president does have. But you may speak to it if you like.
Of course. So that is something that I have really come to remark. I have only been really involved in this area of elections since last year. And so before then, I had very little understanding of, not very little, but I had some issues with understanding the politics that comes into the elections, especially on how to vote. And usually I considered it to be a time consuming or something that didn't interest me. So one of the big things on my platform for this year was making sure that students are aware of what Students Union does, because at the end of the day, if they don't know what it does, they don't care to participate. Not that they don't care, but they don't necessarily participate in it. On top of that, if they don't know the benefits that it has to them, they might also not participate. I think that one of the largest things that I'm doing, on top of just advocating for my own policies in my Instagram and my social media, is making sure that students are aware of what the president's job is and how it necessarily affects them. Another large part is just explaining how voting happens, because yet again, you can say you want to vote, but if you don't know how to go about it, you're not going to do it. So that's a huge part of my platform as well. I did this in my last election, which was a great way that I thought I was able to get some people to come out to vote. Another great way that I've managed was to gain traction with my CAMH initiative to make sure students are paying attention to what I'm posting. I also take a large interest in marketing, as that's an area that I'm interested in. And so I've been analyzing the demographics of those who are coming to the website and those who are also on my Instagram. So I'm making sure that I can market to those who might not necessarily always vote. I think that that's a huge part. And I think going into the next year's election, I have a serious advantage because I can really understand that perspective of students who might not necessarily be too involved. And therefore, I can see how I can best suit them. I think that really comes down to just marketing it and explaining how it benefits them. Because a lot of students don't recognize that a lot of our health benefits, one, even exist, two, are a huge part of this current election.
Thank you very much, Pega. Joseph, same question to you.
Sorry, Aaron, can I ask you to just reiterate the question? I got a little lost there.
Of course. So last year, voter turnout in the Students' Union election was 6.8%. The year before, it was probably closer to 23%. Because of this concerning drop, and obviously the uncertainty surrounding this year, we're not sure what voter turnout will look like this year either. What is your plan, if elected, for increasing voter interest and turnout in the next election? Or if you wish, you can also speak to what you would like to do to increase it for this year's election.
Sure. So I've spoken time and again, Aaron, to the importance of small actionable items and step-by-step progress to doing things. And I understand the importance for a strategic vision. If the union sets transparency and communication as their clear end goals, it's all very well and good, but it's no good without a clear, small, on-the-ground approach to communication. First years aren't going to know where to find this information if we put it online. So why not go right to them to get the information? This is what I said last week, and I really need to hammer it in, not because I think anyone misunderstood it, but because clearly over years of union communication attempts and efforts to try and get first and second years involved in the process, no one has considered doing a process of regular lecture circuits in some of the busiest first-year classes. You know, the standard ones, B111, EC120, first year psych, kinesiology, bio, computer science, all the big ones. No one's thought to go right out to those classes and say, this is who we are. I am the president. I would like all of you to go to this website here and find this information and listen to what I'm saying and come on board with us to give back to us. I think going right to the students and demonstrating that you can put in the time and effort to talk with them face to face so that they can unmistakably know who you are and what you do is the best solution to the communication breakdown between the union and younger students. And I'm going to be honest with you, Aaron, I think that approach spans both lockdown and post-lockdown procedures. If we're talking, if my presidency is still situated in a lockdown situation, I connect with professors and ask to do a quick elevator pitch to explain who I am and what I and my team do to students right in the Zoom lectures. Same way as I would in regular lecture halls if we were in a post-lockdown situation. It's the simple actions that I think are lost in the grander strategic vision, Aaron. And so that's what I want to bring to the table. Small actions that make that bigger difference. Lecture circuits, monthly updates again, the checklist, the centralized hub for communication so people don't have to go to Facebook for one thing, Instagram for another, Snapchat for another, TikTok for none of that. Simple, actionable items, Aaron. That's what I want to see during my presidency.
Thank you very much for your strong answers, candidates, during this first section. I believe in the interest of time, I am going to be moving into the debate portion of tonight's event. I do want to have the opportunity to speak to a number of the questions that the audience is putting forth. So I want to get a few of the debate questions going, give you guys a chance to rebut each other. Just again, to reiterate the ground rules, we're going to make sure that we keep this respectful. We're going to give you each some time to respond appropriately. Please remember to treat this event the way it should be. Treat it more like an interview. You're essentially applying for this job. You don't necessarily want to speak ill of the other candidates. You more want to speak towards your strengths and why you feel you are best suited for this role. So with that in mind, we're going to begin with the first debate question. And this will be directed at Joseph, and then Pega will answer second. So Joseph, why do you believe that you are the best candidate to represent all undergraduate students and their interests? You will have 2 minutes.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate the question because I think it ties together what I mentioned a little while ago, the fact that in preparation for the campaign, I took the time and effort to connect with students across 2 campuses, 5 different faculty associations, 5 different cohorts of students, years 1 to 5, students who are in residence, students who are in locus, dons, Icebreakers, union volunteers, Greek life representatives, athletics people, and all the union faculty members who oversee that progress and enable the possibilities and opportunities that allow all those students to find their niche. By hearing their stories, understanding what it is they would like to see from a union president, and distilling those into a simple but digestible list of actionable promises, and feasible ones too. I know that I capture the perspectives of all Laurier students through my platform.
Thank you very much, candidate Joseph. Candidate Pega, you may either take the opportunity to rebut what Joseph has said, or you may answer the question yourself. Either way, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so no rebuttal. I think those are all great reasons. I think that it's great to have someone with your experience as a candidate. I think I'm going to play more to who I am as a person than my platform, because I think my platform is quite representative as well. But as a person, if you know me, throughout my 4 years here at Laurier, I have really grown into this person. I have faced challenges and struggles, and this Laurier community has really helped me become who I am. I have become who I am through my majors, through student associations, through getting involved in local politics, such as volunteering for the MP here. I've become involved in the Young Liberals here at Laurier as well. I have become involved also with administrative bodies such as the Senate and the Board of Governors, but I've also had a lot of struggles myself, as my CAMH fundraiser will soon be posting about. And it wasn't without the help of the Wellness Center, the friends that I've made through this university, that I was able to become who I am. So I think that because I've had such a diverse understanding of all the different university students here, I've met so many great different individuals from different wakes of life, different areas of life. Like, I can definitely take into consideration their needs. And I'm just going to also play to the fact that I am someone of color. I do understand that there is times of where privilege needs to be discussed, and we need to take that into consideration when we create policies. And that's always going to be on my mind, simply because of how I was born and who I am.
Thank you very much, candidates. Joseph, unless you would like to rebut the answer that Pega has just given, we can move on to the next question.
I don't think there's anything to rebut. I think that was very powerful. Thanks, Pega.
Thank you very much. Now, the next question is directed at clubs, associations, and campus partners. So given that campus clubs, associations, and campus partners have had to navigate a year without in-person operation and engagement from students, what would your approach to supporting these groups look like next year, despite the uncertainty surrounding their operation? So not sure what next year's in person, the extent to which things will be in person will look like. We're not sure if we're going to be able to have in-person events, or if things will be held virtually as they were this year. So what would your approach be to supporting these groups? Another way to rephrase it, if Laurier is not doing in-person operations next year, what is your comprehensive plan for assisting these groups? And a follow-up question for that, what is your plan for clubs or associations that will be encountering the critical issue of succession and member retention? So I will let Pega answer this question first. If you need me to reiterate, I certainly can do that, because it's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, just that last part kind of slipped by me.
Yeah, of course. So the first part, obviously, what will you do to support campus groups and associations in the next year because of all the uncertainty? The second part of that is, what is your plan for clubs who will be encountering the issue of succession and member retention?
Okay, so we've discussed that, and I think that from my experience in talking with my team, we've had some success with clubs and associations, even virtually. So if we talk about Moot Court as an example here, they've actually done, I believe, 4 competitions and hosted their first competition here. They're now preparing for a tournament. So that's a great, that's great. I think that though this is an online experience and it does make it difficult for some bodies of clubs and associations, it also provides them with opportunities that they might not have had, such as international competitions that they might not have been able to go to. Also, a large part of Greek life is recruitment. And I think that we've been able to recruit not only Alpha Phi, but the Pikes as well have had a great recruitment season because students are now more enticed to get involved. So they stay attached to this community. Going off of the last part of your question, so the Laurier strategic plan for the 2020-25 year is a lot of retention and volunteer retention. So I think a lot of the things that we have planned there, we could also help with clubs and associations to just take from our agenda or from our body of what we're practicing. I think that one of the best things that we have going for us is the Nest, which Devin's team has worked really hard on getting implemented in this next year. So the next job for the president is not to create a new system, but rather make sure that that system is being marketed, is being made sure that people, one of the largest things, is for first years during a week to have a good understanding of what resources are available to them, not just mental health, which is a huge part of my campaign, but also what the SU is, what clubs and associations are, and how to get involved. And that is exactly what I want to change.
Thank you very much. Candidate Joseph, you may take the opportunity to answer the question yourself, or you may rebut Candidate Pega. The same question to you. What would your approach to supporting campus groups, clubs, associations look like in the next year? And how do you plan to deal with the issue of succession and member retention?
So pardon, just so that I'm clear, Aaron, do I have time now to either rebut Pega's point or to answer the question myself?
You may choose either. I will give you the opportunity to both rebut her and then answer the question independently if you wish.
Okay, I can do that then. Right, so I suppose it may be viewed as only a very minor nitpick to Pega's point, but I feel as though there's been a misconstruction of one of the core promises of my own platform in the creation of a new centralized hub for programming and services, clubs and associations to get reimbursed, sort out registration, all the things that the Perch provided and more. And to that end, I want to demonstrate that I'd just like to reiterate that I've never used the term creation to describe my vision for a new centralized hub. The term I prefer is development. And that's where understanding that Devin's team has done a fantastic job at setting up the groundwork for the new replacement, the Nest. That's all very well and good. But I'd like to touch on that and tear it apart a little bit with a personal anecdote, if I might. I spoke to a member of the Clubs and Associations management team some time ago. They'll remain nameless for their own sake, but they were in charge of helping certain clubs and associations understand how to use the new online framework. And when asked by executives for particular clubs and associations, okay, what's the deal with the Nest? How is it going to be different? Like, train us, help us understand this. That member of the management team said, honestly, I don't know. They really haven't made this clear. That's concerning to me, Aaron. It's all very well and good to have these frameworks, and if one has been created, great. Sure. But my problem is that if students don't know how to use it, it's not going to be particularly good. It might as well be a great big expensive door stopper if students can't use it effectively to get reimbursed for their club and association purchases and expenditures, if they can't register, if they can't promote themselves and don't know how to use the framework, what good is it going to be? As far as clubs and associations go, Pega's experience with Greek life enrollment is also very well and good. I want to reiterate that. But having spoken with representatives of certain Greek life groups, while I have to preface that I've never rushed a frat or a sorority before, don't know why I'd rush a sorority, I've come to understand that there are very distinct cultures within each fraternity and sorority at Laurier, and that a one-angle approach to integrating all of Greek life within the student union fold is just not going to be able to adapt to the intricacies of each club's culture and reconcile the university's hard line on Greek life reintegration. I am very open to it and working within the intricacies of each culture, but we need to take it step by step, group by group, to make sure that those clubs are accurately represented and not let down for another year.
Thank you for your rebuttal, candidate. Pega, I will give you 1 minute to rebut the rebuttal, if you would like.
So a large part of the last bit that my opponent discussed was the different atmospheres and communities that each Greek life member has. And so a large part of my platform, I just feel maybe I should clarify, is that I've also understood that from speaking with SIG and Pike and Alpha Phi, and being a member of one of them, I understand that some want clubs association, while others would prefer maybe to have their events broadcasted on the SU calendars. So those are all things that I'm willing to work towards, and I think that that's just something that I had to clarify.
Thank you. Now, Joseph, would you like the opportunity to respond to the original question yourself?
I would, but you may have to repeat the first part again, just so I'm clear.
Of course. So what would your approach to supporting campus clubs, associations, and campus partners look like in the next year if elected? And what is your plan for these groups who will be encountering the critical issue of succession and member retention?
All right, right, knocking out the first part of that question first off, I think the issue of club and association issues this year is captured pretty well by two of my major platform initiatives here. Not only the development of the new centralized online hub, which I've talked to death now, but another initiative that I've not made entirely clear in these forums, and I'd like to reiterate now, a series of envoys between one of our major stakeholder groups of the union, the faculty associations. This is an idea that I developed after a conversation with an executive from the Arts Undergrad Society, who expressed their concerns with a lot of time delays and the sort of bureaucratic nonsense that goes along with these kind of operations. Lockdown was not helping things either. And this particular executive found themselves burdened when they had to bring on a new executive and train them up well after the union issued training and enrollment policy that takes place over the earlier part of the year. So this executive was really left in the lurch in having to make sure that this executive for the AUS was brought up to speed on their club and association activities, reimbursement policies, registration, marketing, and to make sure that they knew what the union policies were for go-betweens between our club and associations VP and their own faculty association. And that is where I want to introduce, counterintuitively, you might argue, a middleman, a series of envoys, student volunteers that we'd hire and train in the art of club and association policy to sit in on meetings of each association to better act as a liaison in the moment. If anything is made unclear to particular clubs and associations, they have that envoy right there to clear things up and avoid the bureaucratic time delay. Reimbursement policies, they can ensure the envoy sends it along. And then with this, as the envoy then returns to the club and association department, they can relay what is happening at the association level to the BP clubs and associations, cutting out any communication breakdowns or anything that aren't clear between these groups. Middlemen, as counterintuitively as it seems, are going to be a great way for us to avoid those problems of just what did the union say and how do we use this new nest. It's going to avoid all those issues with a simple actionable item.
Thank you. Candidate Pega, you have 2 minutes to rebut Joseph's answer if you would like, or we can move on to the next question.
I'm okay.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much then. The next question for you both We will do one more question before we move into some audience questions. And if we have more time near the end, I will have a few more for you, just because I want to get to some of these wonderful questions. Important question for you both. Previously, for the last 4 years in a row, Laurier has been ranked #1 in student satisfaction, 4 years in a row. This year, they dropped to #5. I'm sure everybody is aware of that. Why do you believe this is? Personally, why do you personally believe this happened? And how do you think you would approach raising this ranking again if elected? So why do you believe this is, and how would you approach this problem if elected? We will start this time with candidate Pega. You have 2 minutes.
So that has been something that I was really upset to hear. One of the largest things that we need to recognize was that this was prior to COVID, from what I believe, and that we need to also recognize that there's a lot of factors here at play. But I think that one of the largest things is having an inclusive body. That means having the first year experience be one of the best. Also making sure that mental health is being addressed. And that's what I would really like to focus on, because if you're mentally healthy, you can be very happy, and a happy Laurier student is the one that thrives and the one that says that they're enjoying their experience here at Laurier. So I think that my mental health initiatives are one of the most important parts of making sure we get back to #1. Going into programming, furthermore, I believe that we need to have students recognize what resources are available to them. As I mentioned, not just the mental health resources, but clubs and associations, Greek life, athletics, and all those great experiences that Laurier has to offer. I'm also open to hearing more suggestions, because I think that that is a huge part of making sure we're accommodating, to make sure that students feel comfortable to come talk to the SU with their concerns, instead of going to, let's say, groups such as Spotted to really talk about things that frustrate them. We want to stop it before it even happens.
Thank you very much. Candidate Joseph, you may either choose to rebut Pega's answer, or you may answer the question yourself. Laurier dropped to #5 in student satisfaction this year. Why do you believe that is? And what is your plan for approaching this issue if elected?
Sure. I'll take the question myself, but I hope you don't mind if I just turn some lights on. I realize it's a little dark on my end.
Of course, shed some light on the situation.
Nicely done. All right, that should work. Right. The situation with Laurier's placement in the Maclean's rankings was, as Pega mentioned, disappointing, both disappointing and multidimensional. I can't help but feel as though part of the dimensions of the issues are the increase in instances of mental health concerns that students have expressed since the lockdown occurred, and the fact that, given the fact that we've been shut out of a vibrant and lively campus that for many of us gives us a place to call our own, a chance to establish our autonomy and to meet with like-minded other folks in a like-minded academic sphere, is driving so many of our concerns. Not all of them. I want to be very clear. Mental health issues are absolutely intersectional, and they can't be condensed to just one limiting factor. But it can't be denied that mental health concerns certainly were a big instant in diminished feelings of student satisfaction this year. That's why I'd like to work with the University Affairs Department under my administration to start developing advocacy initiatives to ensure that both our lockdown and post-lockdown operating procedures will uphold student satisfaction and the metrics of student satisfaction as the driving goals for what we should be achieving. Both Pega and my platforms mention the serious crisis of mental health instances on our campuses. And that's where I'm looking for that actionable item in my platform to resolve this, expanding the circle of care, making sure that Laurier has an increased physical capacity to host so many more counselors, advisors, and licensed professionals that it needs desperately for students to resolve their issues in a timely manner, because these issues need urgent care, Aaron. If they aren't dealt with soon, I worry about the future of our student satisfaction ranking. I would like to see that get back to #1 as soon as possible, and it starts with resolving or mitigating the damage to students' mental health.
Thank you very much, candidates. In the interest of keeping tonight's event according to schedule as much as we are able to, I think this would be a good opportunity to take a quick break as we transition from the debate Q&A portion to the audience question and participation portion. If we have more time near the end, I will go back and there are a few more questions that I would like to ask. But for the time being, we will take a 7-minute break. The candidates have been talking for a long time, and we appreciate that. We want to give you guys a chance to get up and stretch if you need to, get a drink of water or something. And we will come back in 7 minutes. We will start again at 5:20. So we will see you all again shortly. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Oh, all right. Thank you, everybody. We will start back up in just a minute. Give you guys a second to get back. All right. Thank you very much, candidates. We are going to go into some audience questions now. We have quite a few that have been sent in ahead of time that I would like to prioritize. But I will do my best to ensure that the candidates are roughly answering an equal number of questions to keep things fair. So we will start fairly common question that I think we should just ask overall, because quite a few people sent in some derivative of it. This is directed at both candidates. What is one area of growth? So something you could see some improvement in, or a critique that you have of your opponent's platform. So there are a number of people that have that are curious to know your opinions on your opponent's official platforms. We will start with Pega. You may have 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
So to be as diplomatic as possible, I was only given the 150-word platform to really work with, and then, the interviews that we've both had. And I think, some of the stuff we both agree with. He did, Joey has posted now his new platform. I was only made aware of it an hour before coming into this meeting. So I haven't really had a chance to look at his platform points on this now unofficial platform. But if we are going to be talking about some things that he has mentioned, I think that he said that the Laurier community is dead. And as much as I can understand the sentiment behind that, I personally don't agree with that. I think that's a little, I don't think that's really representative about my experience and the experiences of my peers and my team and a lot of individuals who've been working really hard to keep this community alive. I do understand for first-year students how this has been a really difficult time, and that I'm trying my best to make sure that come the following year, they do have a better experience. That being said, also the method of campaigning has been a little bit hard for my team to follow. I find that it does make it hard for students to understand the clarity and transparency of this candidate's platform. And therefore, I've received a lot of feedback within my within the first week, and some of it's really good feedback, some of it's how I could improve on certain goals, and I hope that I can get a chance to read it all through and through.
Thank you very much. Candidate Joseph, you may take the opportunity to rebut Pega's answer, or you may answer the question yourself.
All right. Can you hear me again, Aaron?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Okay, just checking to make sure. I would like a chance to rebut Pega, respecting, of course, that was a pretty diplomatic answer to what could have been a pretty tense question. So first thing I want to clear up is that I personally did not say the words "the Laurier community is dead" this year. The context I used that quote was from my first-year student, and that was used to emphasize that even the most hopeful and bright and optimistic students that I've met from a very long Laurier career are not feeling it this year. It's not something I personally feel because I've seen Laurier's fair share of challenges, and this one has been markedly different. But certainly, I wouldn't go so far as to call it dead, knowing what I've heard from other associations and groups on campus who are having some successes. By no means do I feel the Laurier community is dead, but the fact that so many students do right now and are clearly expressing it through certain online mediums. Spotted Laurier is a great example of how angry students are right now. I felt that it couldn't be ignored, that kind of sentiment in the discourse this year. The second part of my rebuttal, I just want to check, Aaron, do I still have good time?
Yep, you still have about a minute for your rebuttal, and then you have, I'll give you another 2 minutes to answer the question.
Okay, I can squeeze that into a minute. Right. I recognize that in an unorthodox year, unorthodox strategies may be the right thing we need to boost engagement this year. And certainly it's been pretty unusual for a candidate to not release a platform straight away. But consider what happened when we used the old rulebook for campaigning last year. Two great candidates, Devin Kelly and Leah Shurek, came out of the gate in last year's race incredibly strong, constantly pushing out one another in order for them to each stand in student spotlight right out the gate. And both had great merits and great platforms from day one. But here's the thing, it didn't mean a fig in the end, because ultimately the turnout was 6%. By the time 2 weeks have settled in for students to get used to the platform, the election fades into the periphery. And that's where I feel that PEGA has given a great opening act over the past week. But just like any great concert, if the main course is served 2 hours in, you tend to get tired for a little bit. So while we've had a great opening act in the first week, the way I see it, Drake's going to take the stage.
All right. Now you may answer the question yourself. What is an aspect of PEGA's platform that you have critiques on, or you feel there is an opportunity for growth or elaboration?
Of course. So I have to preface this and say that respecting the broad diversity of PEGA's initiatives and the fact that she very clearly took her time to meet with union executives and do her research on the issues that students are facing this year and how to address those, I'm a little worried that PEGA's platform initiatives lean heavily on strategic ideas rather than those simple actionable items that I hold are necessary for Laurier to feel confident that next year's leadership will have clear communication as a clear end goal and will be implementing it every step of the way. The Brantford strategy in particular that PEGA mentioned concerned me a bit in that by bringing up one of the oldest canards of presidential candidates that I've seen for 5 years now, in and out, since the days of Tyler Van Herzl, the easy transportation between Brantford and Waterloo. It's been discussed for 5 years now. It's been a constant talking point of presidential candidacies, and it flakes out just as hard every year. And each and every year, I worry that the Brantford students grow more and more disillusioned with candidates who come from Waterloo, not understanding the culture of the Brantford campus, coming in with these great ideas, those unicorn promises, but with no ability to achieve them.
Thank you very much. Candidate PEGA, would you like to take the chance to respond to what Joseph has just said?
Yeah, so I think there's a few points there. Going to an opening act, you've also compared this to Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden. At times, those could be paralleled with the hare and the tortoise. And though I've mentioned you are a great orator, I find that that could be a little problematic, especially when, like I've mentioned, my platform is a huge part of getting feedback from students. And I think that at this time, now that you've only given students a week to engage with your platform, you might not receive the great feedback that you need. You've also it seems that it's been a little bit hard for students to now have me criticize your platform because I wasn't really given the amount of time to give you constructive criticism, which is a huge part of this debate, because at the end of the day, we're both here for the students' interest. We're both here to do the best for the students. And though I must give you a round of applause because I think your goals are great, so far from what I've been able to grasp of your platform, I think that a lot of this has become a large game of deciding how we were going to strategize campaigns versus having an analysis of what the students need. I think that it's a little disingenuous to my skills and my campaign team to think that we had not considered that we had not considered students would maybe be saturated by information in the first week. We have planned it out so that our demographics and our platform are being analyzed, and those who are
30 seconds.
And therefore, if anyone's playing politics, I'd just like to say it definitely is not me.
Okay, thank you, PEGA. Joseph, would you like 1 minute for a final rebuttal before we move on?
All right, then, just a quick rebuttal then, Pega. Respecting the hard work that you and your team have put into your campaign, I understand that you're dedicated to a very conventional campaigning strategy. It's very fair. I think you've done a great job at engaging students in this first week of campaigning, and I have no doubt that you will put in a solid effort for the next week and a bit. But given that so many other candidates in years past have done the exact same thing to decreasing returns, I'm really concerned that the same old rule book that so many candidates have tried in the past just is not going to cut it if we want to boost student engagement in this year's campaign. Not only are next year's promises important, it's important that students understand what they are signing up for right now at the end of the month. Because if one of us is going to get elected, how we convey ourselves for the next couple of weeks is going to be extremely important. I want to make sure that they have the energy to follow through with this.
Joseph, quick follow-up question just based off your answer there. Why do you believe that giving students less time to review your official platform will boost investment or interest in the elections?
I consider that this week we have 2 debates scheduled. We have an open forum in which students are very open and able to share any concerns they have on platform and clear any discrepancies. But I also hold out enduring faith for students who tune into this and imagine that really, I don't imagine that students would miss anything in a week's analysis that they wouldn't get from 2 weeks. I have a little more faith in the ability of students to absorb what it is I presented in a very straightforward and easy to read style, a condensed platform, no more than 12 pages, into a solid list of campaign ideas. That shouldn't need any more than a week, in my opinion. And if I'd left it any more, I would be concerned that students would have just tuned it out otherwise, as they have time and again for the last few years. And if people don't believe me in this debate, you can just look at the results from last year and the years before. So many students who could tune into this and stay invested just don't. I'm looking to shake things up this year.
All right, thank you very much. It looks like there are a few people that are interested in this line of questioning, but just to keep things smooth, we're going to move on and we can return to it later if we'd like to revisit it. We now have a submitted question submitted anonymously for candidate Pega, so I will let you respond to it. Pega, your platform identifies Greek life representation as a major strategic promise without a clear action plan to implement positive change. Do you worry that strategic promises without action plans are the same promises that many presidential candidates have made before?
So great question, but to be clear, none of these are promises. They're all advocacy based. And if you go through the platform, most of my goals are clearly stated as advocacy roles. Another part is, as a member of Greek life, I do understand what's been promised in the past. And as you might come to understand, I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that Greek life take an active role in it as a body of the university. I'm simply saying that I will advocate for the Greek organizations possible. If they hope to have club status, I'll advocate for that. In no way, shape, or form am I making any promises, but I do understand that that is something that certain Greek life groups want. Not all, but most. And I also want to just reflect on the fact that a lot of Greek life has a lot of philanthropy in the community. It changes a lot of the agenda and discussion about Laurier community, especially when we have such great philanthropic events with, for example, we had a Pike event with Grand River Hospital. So those are helping the Laurier community. And I think that those are things that should be advertised with the SU calendar. So those are all things that I hope to implement. And I hope that that answers your question as best as I could.
Thank you very much. Joseph, would you like to take the opportunity to rebut that answer at all?
Could you repeat the question, sorry?
Yes. Pega's platform identifies Greek life representation as a major strategic promise, but it doesn't offer a clear action plan to implement that change. Do you worry that strategic promises without action plans are the same promises that many presidential candidates have made before?
Yeah, I think without having been involved with Greek life groups personally, but speaking with enough of them over several years, I've understood that time and again, they see the same promise on a student union candidate's, presidential candidate's platform, Greek life reintegration. And year and again, they're disappointed, and in some instances, even have the rug swept out from under them. I know if many will remember the year when Sigma Chi were promised a booth and certain resources from the union to set up for Pledge Week, coinciding with the Get Involved fair, and suddenly found themselves without a spot or a booth to advertise themselves, with no aforementioned pullout from the union. It's disgraceful. It's the same issue I had with the student at Laurier, who suddenly found herself undercut when paid for contraception at the pharmacy. If students are having their resources cut out from under them right when they're supposed to be paying, it's disgusting, to be honest. The idea that students are being made to put their money on the line for things they're not even aware of. It's outrageous. So that's where I'm keen to make sure that any work I do with Greek life groups next year respects the autonomy and differences of each of their groups, knowing that Alpha Phi is very different from Alpha Omega. Sigma Chi is very different from Pike. Knowing and understanding the intricacies of their cultures and willingness to get involved with the union is going to be crucial to developing a collaborative framework so that we can achieve some meaningful change next year. And knowing that this year's VP of Student Affairs, Dr. Ivan Joseph, is still acclimating to his role, he may be a lot more willing to adapt to the nuances of individual student groups than to the previous Student Affairs administration under Dave McMurray, which was considerably more hardline about the issue.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We are going to move on to another question now. This one will again be for candidate Pega. What would you do differently with regard to mental health training for students, or would you add, or what would you add that the university doesn't already offer, as you make it the first point on your topic? So, mental health training for students.
Okay, so for student volunteers and employees of the university, I think that there's a lot more training that we can really advocate for. Right now, we're kind of following alongside the policies enacted by the Ontario government. So I think that that is something that we can really work on, because at the end of the day, we don't want to be doing the bare minimum. We want to be rising above. Going to just students independently, I have actually quite a long list of initiatives that I hope to take. So first being, I want to put on my LS, though we already have it, somewhere more clarified where students can receive resources. When it comes to training, we really want to have O-week programming really take into consideration putting in mental health initiatives. We have it for consent talks, so I think why not just add that as well? And that not only goes for mental illnesses, but also just mental wellness and just dealing with stress. We want to make sure students know where to go for those resources. And another thing that that Joey has mentioned, which I really liked, was lecture circuits. However, I don't suggest that myself do them, and I'm not saying that they be about what the student union does, but rather that we have individuals from wellness come in, just as we have individuals from the libraries come to teach us APA and things like that. Though we might all know it, or we might pretend to all know it, there's no harm in doing that. And I've spoken with many university professors who have also said that that is a great initiative that we should be taking. It does not take much out of us. It doesn't use a lot of resources. And it also makes sure that even those who might not know it can now learn to seek help. And then following with athletes, we want to also make sure that they're also aware of what programming is available and resources are available.
Thank you very much. Joseph, would you like to respond to that answer at all?
Sure, Aaron. I think my argument is not so much to contradict what Peggy said, but actually to endorse one of her major ideas. If I'm completely honest, I think Peggy and I can find very common ground on the importance of having active engagement with students from the union and from licensed professionals in an active setting, like a lecture. For years, I've seen the disengagement from passive programming, and I think the closest we've had to active engagement for mental health training in lectures is just that obligatory slide that professors will post at the beginning of or end of their course outlining some places to go on campus. And passive programming can yield positive results, but I worry that if we want to get more active engagement and really connect with students and make them aware that the union is dedicated to this cause, like Peggy said, get licensed professionals in those lecture rooms to make sure that they can give an elevator pitch at the very least to condense the most important parts of where they can go to get those resources. Actually touches to another one of my important parts, the importance of safe talk training for students and volunteers who are willing to get it. One of my major platform elements is the introduction of safe talk training for Icebreakers, which they've been demanding for years now. I remember it was a big thing when Zamara Keem and Claudia Wojnarowski ran for president a couple of years ago and was never actualized. But given how close first-year students get to their Icebreakers in that first very dynamic and uncertain week of residence life, students may wind up gravitating more towards their Icebreakers in that tumultuous time than their dons. It's understandable. They're with them for most of the day. So if students have an emergency crisis, why not make sure that the Icebreaker is the most immediate point of contact for them during the day, during a week, have that training to talk them through an immediate crisis and make sure that they can find the licensed help that they need to get better.
Thank you very much, candidates. Now, Joseph, the next question is directed at you. I figured there would be a perch-related question, so I will attempt to amalgamate them all into one question, because it looks like a few people have similar questions. So this question is, what would be the purpose behind having a centralized platform such as the Perch, only for it to have to disappear down the line? I will rephrase that to say being unsure of whether or not it will continue, because as we know, the Perch was implemented, I believe, in Tariq's year. It did not last very long. It was replaced by the Nest. It seems to be a concern from students that we will just be replacing a system like this. And there is a concern that it will be a potential waste or misuse of SU funds or time. So how do you respond to this question of having a centralized platform such as the Perch or the Perch 2.0 that you are unsure of whether or not it will stick around? 2 minutes.
Sure. So I feel as though, first, Aaron, I feel as though there's a faulty premise within the question itself, and the understanding that any centralized hub like the Perch or the new Nest that's being developed will fail down the line. And sure, the Perch went bankrupt in its time and is no longer functional, hence the need for a new system. But that wasn't because of low student engagement, bear in mind. That was because when the Doug Ford government introduced the Student Choice Initiative, union executives had to shut down the site after decreased revenues and lower engagement demonstrated that it couldn't sustain itself. And so now that the Student Choice Initiative has been quashed in provincial court, I'd say there's a vacuum right now for that kind of framework. It certainly wasn't. Based on the policy research and the findings from student engagement with the old Perch website, there was never any concern with student engagement. And certainly it had its flaws in administrational setup. There are some bureaucratic hiccups here and there, but certainly nothing that would justify an absence of such a site. Like, I think many clubs and associations and their respective executive teams would agree a centralized hub for club and association activity that students understand how to use, to market and register, is better than nothing at all, right? Or having to market through all these disparate social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, where many of them are stuck in this awkward limbo stage. It's no good. So, Aaron, the question itself is faulty because I'm absolutely confident that proven student engagement with the old site would make any new centralized hub a continued success, especially where students need this engagement in order to boost the student satisfaction. If I'm to make this a huge part of getting us back to #1 in the rankings, we need a good organized framework to get that going. And having a one-stop shop for club and association activity, especially for young students to find that niche, is going to be crucial.
Thank you. Now, to add on to that, just because I do appreciate you responding and deconstructing the question a little bit. So in mentioning that you do think a comprehensive system is necessary, I will combine this into another question. Why do you believe the new system would be any different from the proposed NEST system that is already sort of in motion?
Sure. I've mentioned it before a little earlier, Aaron, but it stems back from the practical launch and the results from students so far and administrators who've had to use the site, where the approach had time and effort put into it to make sure that a friendly interface could help students understand how to use the site, its formalities. Clubs and associations at the moment are struggling to understand the interface of the thing and to know where to find it in the first place. And for our students, the training certainly helps those clubs and associations, but it's not going to help the students if they don't engage with the programming anyway. And so that's where we need to do a massive, massive push while the NEST is still in its infancy to make sure it is incredibly clear to clubs and associations and the students that they provide programming for exactly what it's designed to provide and how they can find their niche from it.
Thank you very much, candidate Joseph. Pega, would you like the opportunity to respond to anything that Joseph has said?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. We will move on then to another question for candidate Pega. In your platform regarding sustainability, you mentioned that you'd like to see a new organic waste collection service in the residence building. In 2015, however, the First Year Sustainability Council enabled students to rent out green bins for their dorms and apartments, and a lack of engagement led to them scrapping this project. So with your platform goal in mind, how would you be sure that students would be interested in your organic waste system specifically?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think there's like a few points to that. So starting with, this is not a buy-in, this is not like an opt-in system. It's there, it's enacted. Another part of my platform, which will really help with this, is making sure students really understand where waste disposal goes. So when you really have those two working alongside each other, students are more likely to partake in such a system. On top of that, it's not solely residence buildings, it's also Ezra Bricker units. And there are many students who wish that that service was available. There's no harm in creating this service to students who might not utilize it.
Thank you very much. Joseph, would you like to respond to that at all?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, sorry, there was just a hiccup on my end.
No worries.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Would you like to respond to anything that Pega said in her response?
No. No, that's fine.
No worries. We'll move on to the next question then. And it is for you, Joseph. Your platform states that you want to assign icebreakers to next year's second-year students. Do you believe this is a realistic idea, given the fact that the Students' Union would be doubling the amount of students they are supporting and creating programming for, and decreasing the number of potential volunteers available?
So again, Aaron, I'm a little concerned about the last part of that sentence, in the idea that there would be less services available for students, given the increased supply of, given the increased demand from potential second-year students who be getting into O week. Now, I'm struggling to understand the question largely because if we have a dynamically increased pool of O week applicants and an already flourishing pool of icebreakers who are able to provide programming for them and massively boost encouragement and opening icebreaker positions to our younger students in particular, boosting engagement as much as we can in the lead up to O week, I don't see a reason why we would have to worry about the adequate supply of breakers on hand to deal with the increased demand for students. In any case, I would touch on it as well with with concerns about the ratio perhaps of icebreakers to respective communities per se. I've come to understand this year that there have been a whole lot of staffing changes, to put it gently, within the residence department. And then in particular, a number of dons have left their positions due to a myriad of concerns about the status of campus-wide lockdown procedures and residence programming this year, pardon me. Given that, I haven't seen, or at least experienced, that much disengagement from union volunteers to such an extent as has been evident in the residence department. And so given the sheer demand for these services from an entire cohort of students who would never have gotten these services, as well as a fresh and bright pool of icebreakers for next year's programming, would only be doing it for a week's worth of services. The engagement is much greater knowing that those students would have missed out on an entire experience, that formative experience that I keep describing, and could group together with a broader pool of icebreakers, much like the locus system in residence does with their own students, where they don't need a particular residence building to congregate around. They'll group together communities of students within a particular living space outside of campus limits and assign breakers and respective dons to them. It's a simple system. Apply the locus strategy to a second year cohort. There's no need to worry about demand and supply there. It's simple provisions, and it's well worth it to make sure that that second year cohort won't miss out on such a formative experience.
Thank you very much, candidate. Joseph, Pega, would you like to respond at all to anything that Joseph said?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I will move on to the next question then, and this is for both candidates. Obviously, there are a fair number of questions that are directed at the Brantford campus, and obviously, we will have a lot more opportunities in future events to direct some questions specifically targeted at the Brantford campus, because obviously as a moderator, I want to make sure that we get equal representation. There will be an open forum event on Thursday where we will be asking some more Brantford targeted events for anybody in the audience that is curious, and at the next presidential debate as well. But I do feel it is important to ask a summary question here and now for our Brantford students who would like to have some of their questions heard. So, question for both campuses, what is your plan for making sure that Brantford students are feeling included? As sometimes it seems like the SU and other parts of Laurier are focused only on the Waterloo campus. So, Pega, I will let you answer this question first.
Yeah, so a huge part of my platform and for working with my team was really to make sure that we were getting the input of Brantford students. Though I have a few friends and connections to the campus, I just really wanted to make sure that I was encompassing the whole body themselves. So being in having like digital learning has been a really great point, I think, for that kind of community build. A lot of not too many, but a lot of courses have been offered with both student bodies. On top of that, we do obviously every year they are promised, you know, a go bus or something similar to that exact idea. And obviously I can only advocate for such a thing and, you know, work alongside businesses to do that. But one thing that I've come to recognize is more of working alongside local businesses in Brantford to make sure students are getting a Laurier experience, because they don't necessarily have a student bar or restaurant such as Wilf's there, but if we can really try to build relations with the local community there, they can also do that. On top of that, obviously, we would really love to have multi-campus events, but that's, you know, dependent upon COVID regulation and restrictions. I feel for them, and I understand that it could be a little irritating at times, but I really hope that within the first week to sit down with someone from Brantford campus. We have our AVPs, we have our VPs, so that we're able to, you know, build a dialogue with that campus to see what their exact needs are. Because, you know, their needs are sometimes different from the Waterloo campus because they are a commuter school.
Thank you very much, Pega. Joseph, I will give you the opportunity to rebut the candidate or answer the question on your own.
Sure. So for the record, Pega mentioned the ideal reality of an immediate go bus route between the Waterloo and Brantford campuses. Having taken that route from Waterloo to Brantford while I was on the board of directors of the student union, I know that any improvement to the transportation route would be ideal. That current route takes you from Laurier to square one, to McMaster University, to Brantford, and then back again. 3 stops and not a particularly fun amount of time to spend back and forth busing. That said, knowing that so many candidates in years past have promised that easier route of transportation and have fallen short concerns me. While my administration would talk with municipal and provincial representatives and advocates, as it's done in the past, we've done fantastic work under previous administrations with Bardi Chaga, whom we communicate with recently, the mayors of both Waterloo and Brantford, Dave Forsky, of course, to establish that route. I can't promise that in good faith that we will get that transportation route. But that said, knowing that this year's challenges imposed by remote learning have made campus, inter-campus relations incredibly difficult for students within their own campus, knowing that Waterloo State students can't even mingle with Waterloo students at the moment is making it much harder for me to foresee a feasible plan for mixing Waterloo and Brantford students while lockdown is going on. That said, as soon as lockdown ends and Waterloo students and Brantford students have the chance to return to that campus, I want to do a massive push for strategic training for union volunteers across both campuses on the Brantford campus so that you can see the amazing facilities that they have to offer. The RCW, the One Market renovation, which I've seen the blueprints from the Board of Governors. It's going to be absolutely stunning when their services are provided. The new YMCA building. These buildings are prime locations for getting Waterloo students aware of what Brantford has to offer. And making sure that our services are there will be key.
Thank you. Pega, if you would like to provide a final rebuttal, you have 1 more minute, or I can move on to the next question.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We are going to move on to the next question then. Thank you so far for all the questions that have been submitted. We do have about an hour left in today's event, so I will endeavor to get through the majority of the questions that we have left over. If we do miss any, please feel free to send them to either myself, our CRO, Nidhi, or our chair, Simi Hussein. If you want to send questions to the moderator directly, you can find us on social media at WLUSP. So the next question is for both candidates. Joanne Pega, in a message from President Deb McClatchy to the Laurier community, she addressed the racism and violence that takes place on the campus. In the message, she wrote that, quote, building thriving communities requires resolve in our commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and anti-racism. As the SU president, how would you work to achieve this message and this goal? And what steps would you take towards this commitment? We will begin with Pega. You have 2 minutes.
So obviously this is not just something a policy can talk about. I am a person of color. I have dealt with certain issues myself, and I do understand how prominent it can be when other people don't necessarily recognize it. But that being said, I cannot necessarily speak for all people. Some people have different, experiences than myself. So all I can really say and all I can do in my position is to really work alongside BIPOC communities, the Rainbow Room, and Indigenous groups, which are obviously something I'm extremely passionate about, to make sure that all my policies are being accommodating to these groups as well. I am a sociology major, so I think that also gives me a benefit in taking on this role, as I'm able to look at this and policymaking in an objective standpoint. That being said, I have to make sure I'm talking to the right groups as I make policy.
Very much. Candidate Joseph, you may either choose to respond to the question or you may address the question independently.
All right. I'd like to address the question independently, if you don't mind. I have no rebuttal for Peg on that issue.
Go ahead.
So first, I need to preface the issue by mentioning that if I were the student union president and had to address the massively topical issues of anti-racism, anti-blackness, and discrimination that have plagued the Laurier community for some time, I recognize that my own lived experiences do not translate into the kind of perspectives that any actionable change could merit from for the student union. My own perspectives are limited by my lived experiences, and so that is where my plan for the revitalized diversity and equity initiative that Tariq Plummer laid a framework for during his time explicitly mentions that my own involvement with promoting equity, diversity, and inclusivity at Laurier will be divested to a specialized student executive who would lead a task force. The student would come from a marginalized, racialized community on campus and have enough lived experiences and enough adequate policy knowledge and ability to communicate with those communities that have faced discrimination on our campus to open dialogues and understand what kind of actionable changes could be implemented the student union could achieve specifically to accomplish meaningful change and rejection of racism and systemic oppression that these communities face. That is to say, in a nutshell, I'm divesting my effective involvement in that kind of project to someone with the lived experiences to understand how to lead that conversation. That person would then receive my backing and resources to make those meaningful changes a reality. As far as the university communication goes and the extent of my cooperation with Ed McClatchy on such an initiative, can you hear me?
Yep. Just reminding you of the time.
Okay, right. As far as my communication and collaboration with the university, and especially Ben McClatchy go, my priority, as far as collaboration goes, would be to immediately back the university's EDI action plan, which outlines a system of actionable goals, actionable items, and strategic goals to help specific diverse communities around Laurier, including Indigenous, Black, Muslim, international students, trans students, LGBTQ+ students, understand what needs to change for their benefit.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next question. This is going to be directed at both candidates, and I will rephrase it slightly. Candidates, do either of you have plans or strategies in place or related to your platform regarding cutting costs within the students' union? So how will you plan to cut costs within the students' union? Or what appropriate cost-cutting measures would you like to implement? We'll begin with Pega.
So I think the large part of cutting costs is efficient. I think a lot of the I think that a lot of what I am suggesting is marketing, which is in no way, shape, or form adding costs to anyone. It is something that I myself am extremely passionate about and something that I can instill myself. On top of that, I think that a lot of the resources are already available to the university, so we need to just market those better. And I think that having athletics either lower like student athletic fees, those are all things that we could discuss and talk about. Obviously, until I'm put in the situation, if elected, I won't know the exact details of everything. So those are the broad statements that I can make at the moment.
Thank you very much. Joseph, the same question for you. How will you, or do you have any plans to cut costs within the Students' Union? Sorry, Joseph, you'll have to unmute your mic. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. So, Aaron, I'm an accountant by trade. I understand the importance of bootstrapping wherever necessary. In fact, I guess it's a big part of my British identity, just making do with what you've got. I'm not exactly a rich guy, so it guided a lot of the way I was raised personally. And so understanding where the university can, the union, can trim the fat as far as unnecessary expenditures or chasing bad money with more money goes, I want to start with advocacy initiatives. Understanding that the university's University Affairs Department faces immediate policy challenges with regards to helping students reintegrate into the Laurier community and into Waterloo after the lockdown has emerged. I want to make sure that our advocacy work is streamlined and dedicated to making sure that students do have that confident contingency plan, a plan of action that will help them understand how they can get back to life on campus, respecting whatever social distancing rules or post-lockdown protocols may be necessary until we return to the old normal, quote unquote. But while we are doing that, we need to respect the work that is being done for other major policy initiatives. I am, as I mentioned before, a big fan of the Tenants' Rights Initiative, and of course, making sure that students do come back to comfortable arrangements when they return to their respective campuses is going to be a huge initiative that the University Affairs Department will need to dedicate itself to. But as far as funding resources into other advocacy initiatives, we need to make sure that our vision is immediately streamlined towards figuring out what our contingency plan is, our restoration plan for getting students to feel comfortable and welcome back on campus. That means cutting other initiatives in order to streamline and make sure that the contingency planners have all the resources they need to be successful in that regard, then I say that's a necessary sacrifice.
Thank you very much. Candidates, just to let you know how I'm going to progress for the rest of tonight's debate, in the interest of keeping things according to the schedule, because I want to get through all the questions, I am not going to ask candidates if they would like to rebut anymore. If you do want to rebut the opponent's answer, please indicate to me before I move on. Thank you very much. So the next question is for both candidates again. How do both of you plan to work with the board of directors for the betterment of the students? So I assume this question will be discussing the incoming board of directors. So how do you both plan to work with the incoming board of directors for the betterment of students? We will begin with Pega. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, so the board of directors is a huge part of holding the president accountable. I think that though we need transparency on both sides, we also need to maintain between them as well. I think that I do know a few individuals from my experience on the Senate outreach committees who are applying for positions on the board and will hopefully get their positions, but I do need to I do recognize that I need to maintain that autonomy between the two groups. That However, that does mean that I would like to maintain also constant communication with the chair of the board into making sure that not only am I acting in accordance with the policies set out by them, but also that I'm making sure that they themselves have all the tools needed to accomplish their goals as well.
Thank you very much. And Joseph, the same question to you.
Right. Pega touched on this briefly, Aaron, but this is a difficult question to answer in that there are certain checks and balances between the communication of the board and the president respectively. In the policy manual, there is an entire section of rules and procedures set out to limiting the amount of communication and cooperation that the board has with the president. It calls board management delegations, designed specifically to make the president's role unique, albeit collaborative, with the board and with the chair in particular. And it's in that regard that I want to make sure that whoever the board elects to be their chair for the year will be someone that I can collaborate with regularly, who will regularly assess feedback from their individual directors. Ideally, that chair will have one-on-one sit-downs with their directors to make sure that their views and the platform initiatives that they came in with that may be a little more operational than strategic, which is not the role of the board itself, can be actualized in a meaningful way. I'm very keen to understand exactly what perspectives the director candidates bring to the board. One in particular, Director Muna Mohammed, in one of the last week's open forums, cited her experience with a Black Lives Matter movement with several of her friends before she arrived during a summer. And it stood out to me. I don't know a student who's participating in that kind of experience, and knowing the major issue that I'll face with pursuing equity, diversity, and inclusive initiatives, I'll be keen to understand what kind of lived experiences and perspectives someone who's engaged with that kind of action might be able to bring to board discussions.
Thank you very much, candidates, for your answers. The next question is for Pega. Victoria says, "Hi, PJ. I love your mental health platform, and I think your initiatives are amazing. Can you please further expand on them?" I will give you 2 minutes to respond to this.
Yeah, so I can talk about it for so long, but basically, the Wellness Center has so many different resources available to students at almost no cost to them. So that's something that we want to make sure students are able to understand. So we want to make sure that MyLS has a resource, though it currently does, but we want to make sure that students are aware of where it is placed. Another thing is having, yet again, people go into lectures and explain what resources are available. On top of that, we do want to better the resources available by, working alongside groups such as BetterHelp, for example, or other online therapy resources. I have utilized them, and I think that they're a great resource to have, and I would, at the very least, hope that we can subsidize them. On top of that, I think that mental health is something that we're not really talking about to the extent that it needs to be discussed, especially the difference between mental wellness and mental illness. And I think that that's something that first-year students really need to understand. So that really goes to O-Week programming. On top of that, I think that volunteers and employees do need to have services such as Safe Talk, which is highlighted in my platform, and if that's not an available resource, to make sure that we have someone on call at 24/7 who's able to respond to crises. Because Dons have time and time again expressed to myself and many of the members of my team how they have dealt with crisis that they didn't necessarily feel prepared for. And though it might also be hard for the student who's facing them, the ramifications of the individual who's dealing with that are unknowable. We don't know how they can respond. That could trigger something within someone if they don't know how to deal with it. So I really want to make sure that O-Week programming, all our employees are well trained, and everyone is aware of what the resources are.
Thank you very much, Pega. Moving on, question for both candidates. As of next year, there is the possibility that education will still be remotely delivered. Many students believe that they should not be paying for certain fees as they are not on campus. This was a bit of a hot topic issue. I'm sure you've all seen the many angry tweets on Spotted. This is something that the current operations team has had to deal with and answer and address a number of times. With that being said, how would you personally address this question if it were to come up again? We'll begin this time with Joseph.
Pardon, I just had to unmute. Just to reiterate, Aaron, so that it's clear, your question is, how would I personally correspond with irate students who take platforms like Spotted at Laurier to address their grievances?
Correct. You can speak to how you would address it publicly or privately.
Sure. So I think as far as my role goes as president, I understand that as the steward for the organization and the main figurehead, I need to be accountable not only to the board of directors for the organization, but to the membership of the organization. You ultimately are the students who elect me to the position, and so I need to make sure that I'm always accessible and ready on hand to address any concerns that you may have as and when they occur. Now, understanding that, I've made clear communication a cornerstone of my platform and my initiatives, and I've talked about simple and actionable steps to accomplish a clear communication line between myself and the ownership of the organization, the students. And so I can talk a lot more to the monthly update reports on the website, cleaning it up so that we clear out some of the older clutter that's taking up a lot of the website, and streamlining its presentation to make those channels much clearer, introducing the monthly checklist graphics so that students always know what my platform promises are now and how I've delivered on them months from now once I become president. But on top of that, as I've mentioned before, those one-on-one opportunities for me to meet with students are going to be the ultimate make or break factors between making myself an effective policy communicator. I've talked a lot about lecture circuits, but that's me speaking to an audience of upwards of 100 potentially students, 200-300 even. I'm considering strongly as well, not only would I have what I feel is now an obligation to speak to students in that lecture environment, to open up regular Zoom meetings as my time goes on in office, to make sure that students always know when they can speak to their president directly through Zoom, a series of Q&As, if you will, but also to make sure that I'm delegating any and all relevant issues to the appropriate resources. If someone is angry at the student union for an issue that is not their particular jurisdiction to answer, if it's a university issue and not a union issue, I will make sure that I'm connecting that student with the appropriate resource for them to get a clear and accurate answer. Be it the president of the university, the VP Student Affairs, Dean of Students, whatever a resource on campus may help them get the right answer so that they'll understand the process of delegation, the fact that the union may not be within our power to exercise certain functions.
Thank you very much. Peggy, the same question to you. If you'd like me to reiterate it, I can certainly do that.
Yes, please.
Yep. So next year, there's the possibility that education will still be remotely delivered to students. Obviously, some students believe that they shouldn't be paying for certain fees because they're not going to be physically present on the campus. And it's a question that current operation teams have had to deal with. So if you had to address that issue, that concern, that question, how do you believe you would, personally or privately or publicly?
So obviously that would really suck, but you know, it's a real possibility. And I think the best way that we can handle it is to really talk with administration to see what the costs are and how we can whittle them, especially, you know, there's custodial staff that still need to they're still under employment here. So one of the biggest things that we really need to think about are where the costs could be cut. And that's something that we can really work on in the summer months and something that we could really figure out coming into September. Other than that, I think those are just areas where we also need to hear student feedback, because I feel like a lot of it is just, you know, out of frustration with this whole policy of COVID guidelines. And it is frustrating, and I understand that it does suck, but you know, we have to be aware that we still want to maintain our buildings so that when students do come back, they're able to come back to looking predominantly the same.
Thank you very much, candidates. We're going to move on to the next question, and this is for both candidates as well. What steps towards recognizing privilege at Laurier will you take as the leader of a generation of activists? Joseph, I will allow you to go first with this question. What steps towards recognizing privilege will you take as the next potential leader of a generation of activists?
Sure. So understanding the privilege that I myself wield as a white, straight, international student from an Anglo-Saxon country, I understand that I've had things a lot better, relatively speaking, than particular other communities who've come to Laurier without as much experience as I've had, having had some time before to live in Canada before I came to Laurier, to acclimate to Canadian culture and the way of certain social values and understandings. But having spoken to a lot of international students who've expressed their concerns with a predominant culture that pervades the student union, I've understood that while my own lived experiences can't parallel what they've gone through, I recognize that part of the diversity and equity initiative that I aim to achieve would be ensuring that the task force that is set up is having relevant conversations about the nature of privilege within the culture of the students' union, in helping us who have significant privilege work around it and accommodate those students who just do not have access to the same opportunities that we might have, whether we understand it consciously or unconsciously. Now, while I want to reiterate this and make this very clear that while I understand I do not have lived experiences that these students have to endure from these marginalized communities on campus, that by no means do I want to adopt a hands-off approach, basically just say, okay, here's your task force, just sort this all out and make it your own, and I'll just rubber stamp whatever you do. That's not my intent whatsoever with this. My intent is to listen and learn to what is coming out of the task force, to have that executive leading the task force explain very clearly to me what is coming out of those meetings, what meaningful change can be accomplished, and help me better understand those perspectives that I cannot access because of privilege. By no means is that a hands-off approach. I don't want to impose upon those meetings. It's not going to be a good look for me to sit in on a task force meeting about diversity and equity and inclusion and talk about experiences that members of those marginalized communities can't relate to because they haven't had the privilege I have. It's not going to be a good look at all. And so I want to make sure that I'm respecting those perspectives by listening carefully rather than imposing my own views.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Pega, same question to you. What steps towards recognizing privilege at Laurier will you take as the next potential leader of a generation of activists? You will have 2 minutes.
So I think this is a really interesting question. Privilege shows itself in various facets. I recognize my privilege in the sense that I was clothed, my education was paid for, and so on. But, you know, I also face issues alongside my color and a lot of other issues there. But a large portion of my mental health advocacy was based on the fact that resources are not always largely available. A lot of my CAMH campaign is based off the fact that many people either don't have the right environment to get better or don't have the resources to fund getting better. And so that's why I'm really passionate. And I genuinely, like, one of my largest things that when I'm older, I really hope to advocate for is having mental health be something that is considered a part of just medical care. On top of that, I'm a huge supporter of Indigenous rights. And I really hope that one day I'll be able to lobby for those groups. The LGBTQ community, I personally cannot say that I am a huge supporter of them and I hope to advocate for them, but I can't say that I have the same experiences as them either. So one of the biggest things to addressing privilege is just addressing my own from the very beginning, because I can't necessarily say that I can understand everyone's issues. And especially with policy formulation, a large part of BLM was that people didn't really understand the systemic issues at hand. I study sociology, so I do think that I do have a fair understanding of it, but I can never say that I have the full grasp of it myself. So that, yet again, is me talking to BIPOC, talking to the Rainbow Room, talking to LGBT groups, talking to Indigenous groups to make sure that I'm getting all their understandings of my policies and how I might be a little bit blind or tone deaf at times. And I really hope I'm
30
not.
seconds.
But if I am, I really hope to get their feedback.
Wonderful. Thank you, candidates, for your answers. We're going to continue moving on to hopefully address some more of these questions. And again, as a reminder, if we do not get to some of the questions today, I promise you I will be putting them in my list of questions that I will be asking at later events. There's another one on Thursday and a second debate next Monday. So I promise you I will get to these questions in due time. The next question is again for both candidates. The Rainbow Center is a very important part of our campuses, but often isn't paid much attention to. How will you work with the Rainbow Center to support LGBTQ+ students and promote an inclusive campus? So I will let Joseph answer first. You will have 2 minutes.
Right. So understanding the significant amount of work that the Rainbow Center has done over the past few years to enhance the quality of life for LGBTQ+ students, I want to make sure that they are given all the collaborative opportunities that would justify considerable changes that these students and this community on campus desperately need. LGBTQ+ students and the work of the Rainbow Center are specifically outlined in my platform under the Diversity and Equity Initiative, pardon me, in that under one of my actionable items, I've outlined that students will have an opportunity to identify themselves as one of a number of marginalized or racialized communities on campus, and that specific employment or volunteer opportunities will be set aside for students who identify with those communities, specific spots to ensure that there is an actionable change ready to make sure that those students are integrated into the fabric of our union rather than just getting pushed aside. The Rainbow Center is going to be consulted extensively to make sure that the quality of that integration is meets the needs of LGBTQ+ students, respecting individual experiences, of course. But it cannot be understated that the ideas that former President Tariq Plummer initiated in order to pursue this initiative in cooperation with both the Rainbow Center and the Center for Student Equity, more broadly speaking, is something that I aim to continue. Its legacy of helping out underprivileged communities is something that I aim to develop upon under my administration, lockdown or no lockdown, remote learning or no remote learning. The work that the Rainbow Center has done to provide safe spaces too, honestly, absolutely tremendous. And I think that's another actionable item that we can help establish and expand across our campuses, both campuses, to help students who need them, especially those who identify with the LGBTQ+ community.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Same question now to Pega. The Rainbow Center is a very important part of our campus, isn't often paid as much attention to. How will you work with them to support LGBTQ+ students and promote an inclusive campus? You'll have 2 minutes as well.
Yeah, so when I was building my mental health policies, I was really speaking with my campaign policy director for the mental health resources, and her and I were really talking about making sure that we have resources available to them. And I really, really wish I had a chance to sit down with the Rainbow Room and just talk to them, the Rainbow Center, and just talk to them as to what their needs are. Because at the end of the day, I can make as many assumptions as to what the LGBT community needs, but I'm not exactly a member. I can't say that I face the same issues that they do. And even in this chat, it was mentioned about female hygiene products in both bathrooms. And that's just not something that I would consider, not because I'm ignorant to the issues, but because I'm not a member who really has any experience with that. But I would love to sit down and have a discussion about it. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is just transparency between what I'm doing and making sure that I'm having a proper discussion with what their group really needs, not making assumptions as to what they do need.
Thank you very much, Pega. And it looks like we have a follow-up, just clarification point for Joseph. Someone is wondering, are you saying that students need to self-identify as members of the LGBT community to get help from the Rainbow Center? Because doing so does put students who self-identify in harm's way. So if you wouldn't mind clarifying that.
It's a fair question to ask, and it does merit clarification. By no means is the initiative intended to help students who are uncomfortable expressing their identity. By no means. Nothing is compulsory about the initiative. It is more intended to offer up a doorway of opportunity to those students who may otherwise be left out of the fabric of the student union. If those students, they're knowing the values and contributions that members of the LGBTQ+ student community makes within Laurier on both campuses, I could see that the Rebuttal initiative was intended to ensure that those students are given a concrete opportunity to provide it if they are comfortable with it. It's on them to make that choice, and I'm offering a doorway of opportunity, and by no means does that mean pressuring those who are unwilling to take it. They can do so at their own opportunity, as and when they feel comfortable. All I want to do is offer the tools for them to succeed and be welcomed into the integrated fabric of the union.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Victoria, just in the interest of time, we're going to keep moving. If you have follow-up questions later that you would still like to ask, feel free to send them to us, and I'll make sure that everything you ask is responded to. But I do want to follow up on a question, and it was one that Pega mentioned as well, regarding menstrual products. So there's another question for both candidates. In a survey from Ellsberg about menstruation, they found that 38% of Laurier students and staff struggle to afford the menstrual care products that they need. For non-binary and trans individuals, upwards of 75%, big number, struggle to afford the menstrual care products that they need. Currently, Laurier does not provide menstrual products in all washrooms, which causes discomfort, and alienates many trans and non-binary individuals who use gender-affirming bathrooms. So how would you try to make Laurier a more inclusive and safer place for trans and non-binary students, and not just in terms of menstrual products? So you may speak to the issue of menstrual products in bathrooms, but I would prefer that you speak more generally to your plans for making Laurier more inclusive and safer for trans and non-binary individuals. We'll start with Pega.
Yeah, so that was, when I read that in the chat, I was just really shocked by that statistic. Obviously, if I could take the Scandinavian model of just having it, completely free in the country, I would, but those aren't really things that we can necessarily push for. But one thing that I will say is I think that that's a problem that as I mentioned in my last answer, was I can't necessarily imagine what it's like to be someone in that community, because I haven't been in that community. And as much as I can make those assumptions, it's not fair to them and it's belittling to their experience. So the most I can do and say in that exact instance is I need to be open and able to connect with their resources and to talk to them, because if I don't know the problem, then I can't necessarily help fix it. Further, that being said, just talking about safety in general in our community. I've been the victim of peeping Toms at this university, and it has been really hard for me, especially in the summer. The university was so kind in letting me stay at a different home until my roommates did come back. But I did recognize that, and a large part of my platform at first was to have more police patrols. But I recognized after time with discussing it with communities, it had slipped my mind that police patrols are something that could be one, great for some people in the community, but could also make other people in the community uncomfortable. And that was not something that I recognized at first. But now that I have, I also made other changes to that, such as having more safety alarms put in high student populations, or having more lights put up in areas such as student dense population areas as well. So that's mostly what I can say to that. But yet again, I just have to be open to listening to their ideas if I was elected in this role.
Thank you very much, Pega. Same question to Joseph. How would you make Laurier more inclusive and a safer place for trans and non-binary individuals, and not just in terms of menstrual products? Unmute. Thank you.
Right, can you hear me now? Okay. So I think it's worth echoing Pega's sentiments here in that issues like accessibility of menstrual products to trans and non-binary students, with the complications with sorting it out are common across these kind of intersectional issues. I'd not considered, for example, the concerns with issuing higher police presence around communities to contest with the issue of sexual harassers. It would have been my immediate go-to response as well, but understanding that creates problems for other communities helps me understand much better that we clearly need, as president, I would need a task force to the extent that I'm proposing in order to help me listen and learn to the problems that these intersectional communities face, and help me understand what kind of policy implementations could act as the best compromise for multiple groups with differing interests that may suffer harm to the dignity of their identities as a result. Now, I have to again reiterate that my own lived experiences re-emphasize the need for me to listen and learn to what this task force is putting in front of me, knowing that I don't menstruate. I don't identify as a trans or non-binary person. I cannot come in totally uninformed to this kind of discussion and talk about my vision for an ideal solution to these problems. Now, as far as menstruation goes, as far as accessibility to menstrual products goes, in research for this, I've come to understand that both the Toronto and Waterloo public school boards recently initiated pilot projects for more accessible menstrual products for their students to significant degrees of engagement and success. I would consider proposing an alternative solution, but again, that's the kind of idea that would need to be assessed through the lens of the inclusive task force, of which I would be sitting in, listening and learning to these perspectives to understand what kind of solution would satisfy all relevant groups in this and respect the dignity of their identities.
Thank you very much, candidates. We are quickly approaching the end of today's event, so I will do my best to respond to some of the questions that have been put in the chat. I will do one more question related to Joseph's platform near the end, but I want to get to some of the other ones first. We will go. One second. Okay, we have a question that is for Pega now. Pega, you mentioned specific, you mentioned gym time specific for athletics teams. Now, how will you ensure that this does not cause an inconvenience to other students, given there are many, many teams, and this seems impossible to do so without affecting other students? Now, this is assuming, of course, that this is outside of the current restrictions, and if everything goes back to normal, how will you make sure that it doesn't cause an inconvenience to other students?
Oh, this is just, it's such a, like, I love the question. It's just something that we've really talked about with my team. So that's why I'm smiling so much. So that being said, 6 a.m. practice times are not something unusual for student athletes. And though I will recognize that there are some students on our campus who do utilize the AC at those times, it's not that that's a heavy workout hour. I, being someone who does go to the gym pretty regularly because I find it a great outlet for mental health things, I do notice that I often butt heads, not butt heads, but, you know, they get in my way, like huge athletic groups. And that's because, you know, they come in to practice as a team, but they don't have an allocated time. So that way they're getting in my way and I'm getting in their way. And that way both of us are waiting for machines, and you know, it's just not a great situation. So one thing that I've talked to both gym goers and athletes was a lot of different universities actually allocate, you know, 6 a.m. time slots to athletes, or 10 p.m. time slots. Those aren't busy hours, generally speaking, for just recreational gym goers. And so I think that that way we can make sure that athletes aren't really getting in the way of students then. If athletes have issues amongst themselves with teams and stuff like that, that's more of a clerical error that I'm sure that the AC will be able to accommodate if this this plan were to be put into motion. And I think that, yes, there's a lot more insights and technical things that need to go into consideration, but I think that overall that's not a huge challenge.
Thank you very much. Candidates, I have another question that is for both of you, and it is related to nepotism. So I will give you both 2 minutes to respond to this. Assuming that you both have friends, you know, as one is wont to have, assuming that you both have friends and people you know running or applying for certain positions within the SU, as this is traditionally tends to be an issue, I think, in any organization. How do you plan on separating your friendships from your professional life and avoiding conflicts of interest or the possibility or criticism of nepotism, as has been historically a critique of the Students' Union? And we'll begin this time with Joseph. You will have 2 minutes.
Sure. So to address this question first, Aaron, I think I need to make it very, very clear that I've recognized the effects of nepotism and what students have come to call the bubble of the union's management team for a while. This is one of the things that affected how I resonated with Tariq Plummer's style of leadership. When Tariq was mentoring me, he made it very clear that his experience on the board was marked by a culture of exclusion, wherein he felt as though every step of the way to his accomplishing his election to the board, the role of chair, and eventually to the presidency, there was a select group of individuals who had almost been handpicked by even the president themselves to carry on their legacy, you know, like an appointed prince, as it were, or a princess. So this is where I resonate with Tariq Plummer's approach. Tariq came in with a very clear goal to challenge that culture with the bubble of the union. Recognizing that, I know that I similarly have had difficult experiences with certain groups within both the union and within the residence department in and of itself. This is something that challenged me during my last period in the as a residence advisor. A lot of talk and rumors from people in the building I lived in, which I was heartbroken when I found out that, the quotes that flowed around, he's only doing this to be president. It's immensely disappointing, and what I felt invalidated my work with the union and to propose great policies that carried on the legacy of a great Laurier leader. So that's where I want to follow in his footsteps, knowing that I've not had links extensively with the current president or the one before that. In fact, the closest links I have are back to Tariq Plummer, whose close associates have come and gone now. I recognize that I am coming into this series of the transition and into hiring with effectively a clean slate. And knowing that my willingness to hire young students is a priority for me, to bring them into the fold of the union and to give them these volunteer opportunities, I think it's all the more evident that I want to see a new and fresh crop of student leaders and ideas dominate next year's administration. It's what we need to challenge all the difficulties that have come with this COVID lockdown.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Now the same question to you, Pega, if you need me to restate it.
No, thanks, but I think it's a pretty easy answer for me. I came into this with no SU experience as a board of director, and though I have experience in outside administration, or Greek life and different affiliations, students don't really have to worry about that. If anything, that's something that I really want to move away from, because I think that this is a little bit, and I don't mean to sound so blunt, cliquey. I find that there was a group of students back when I was in my first and second year as a politics major who did get involved, and then I just felt behind the goal line. I didn't feel that I could get involved because there seemed to be such a great group of students who understood it to its very T. And I want to make sure that that's not it. I want to make sure that this is a sense of community, because at the end of the day, Laurier is such a great community, and I want that to be shown and represented in the SU.
Thank you very much, Pega. Joseph, we have another question for you. You keep mentioning Tariq's administration. Obviously, we know he was a great inspiration for you when building this platform. I'm interested to know, what are some areas of Tariq's administration that you can critique or disagree with? And what are some ways that you think you might improve on some of the things that he put forward in his year?
Certainly. It's a fair critique, and I think it's worth mentioning that while Tariq and his presidency inspire my particular brand of leadership, I'm still very much my own man in this race. While I remember the legacies that I'm aiming to achieve, I want to make sure that I'm not putting my eggs in one basket. Another major source of inspiration that I do want to bring up, because I know he's going to bash me for it later, is Kevin Bonnell, who I will insist to this day is the greatest candidate that never ran for president. To get to the actual question, though, Daniel's question, which I do respect, Tariq was both limited by the ambitious nature of his promises and the limited time he had to deliver them. One of the ones that stood out to me in particular was his plan for Greek life reintegration. He wanted to ensure that each Greek life group had an opportunity to have their experiences listed on the co-curricular record, now the Laurier experiential record, which I still think is an ambitious goal that I would like to see Greek life groups accomplish by the end of my presidency. And knowing that we now have a new leader of our student affairs department, Dr. Ivan Joseph, who again may not be as hardline as Dave McMurray was on Greek life groups as a whole. If he understands the culture of each group there is sufficiently unique enough to justify some groups getting qualifications, while some others that don't want to cooperate with the union may keep doing their own thing, it's understandable. I want a tailored approach that unfortunately already Tariq was just not able to deliver in his limited time and with the resources he had.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Appreciate you responding to the question. We're almost near the end, so we have time for just a few more questions for today. I do have one question that I have for both candidates. This goes back to some inclusivity and anti-racism related topics. Are both of you familiar with the recent Being Race study, which analyzed the experience of POC and Indigenous students on Laurier's campuses? And if you are, would you consider working with the folks who implemented this study to create a more inclusive environment at Laurier? So we'll begin with Pega this time.
So I'm not familiar with it, no. It is interesting, and it is definitely something that I look towards reading more about, and I'm happy that it was brought to our attention. I would be interested in hearing more about it before I can make any comments about working alongside them. But yes, I would love to work with any community that supports BIPOC communities, people of color, and any other minority group here at Laurier.
For sure. Thank you, Pega. And the same question to you, Joseph.
Sure. Like Pega, I cannot say that I know the contents of the survey or its findings, but from what you've described to me, Aaron, it does sound as though the findings of the survey and any normative recommendations it may make to increase the quality of life for marginalized communities on campus would fall right in line with both my own diversity and equity initiative and the strategic vision that has implemented. It also sounds like it aligns very, very strongly with the university's own EDI action plan. And considering that I'm very keen to align the union's strategic vision with the clear-cut action items set out in the university's EDI action plan, then I think the results of that survey may co-align with that strategic vision very, very well. Of course, I would need to read it myself to make an informed statement on how it may align with our interests, but from the sound of it, it does fit very, very well into what I know about the university's EDI action plan, and by extension, would align very, very well with the union's strategic interests.
Thank you very much. All right, we have 9 minutes left in today's presidential debate event. I want to thank you all who came out, and I want to especially thank all the people who have been putting such wonderful comments and questions in our chat. We appreciate you keeping it respectful and directing your concerns and your wonders and your worries towards the candidates. This has been fantastic. Because we only have a few minutes left, I want to now just freely open the floor for anybody who wants to ask a question personally or anybody who wants to drop a last-minute question in the chat box. And as a reminder, I have seen all of the questions that have been asked today. If any have not been answered, there is a reason for it. And I will be saving a copy of the chat log. I'll be looking through the feedback that you all presented, and I will be incorporating it into questions for future events. So thank you all very much. We have one question for both candidates from Ty. The role of president can be a very incredibly stressful and time-consuming role. How do you plan on balancing your own physical and mental health with the role of president and CEO so that you can effectively fulfill your duties? So we will start this time with Pega.
So going into this, I was pretty well aware, as Devin had made clear, that this is a pretty intensive role. I've also spoken with Kanwar, who also told me that this was a pretty intensive role. Tonight, it will be made clear that I have struggled quite a bit with some issues, but I've really worked alongside my family and getting mental health resources. And I've even started therapy, as I've mentioned before, to really be able to build myself up to someone who can handle that. I take physical health very seriously, being that I used to have an eating disorder. So one of the biggest things that I've learned is nutrition is very important to me, and being physically active as well. So I am a regular gym goer, and I do find it hard with COVID to stay active, but I have managed to just get out of the house at least 2 to 3 times a day for a 1 to 2 kilometer walk. So those aren't going to be really big issues. I have also managed, you know, a 6 course semesters in the past, and also having, you know, my Greek life affiliations and making sure that I was being attentive to those needs as well, while also having all these other things juggled. So I definitely know how to organize my time and make sure that I'm doing everything as best possible.
Thank you very much, Pega. Joseph, the same question to you.
So I have to preface this and say, Ty, it's a very, very good question. I'm glad you put that one out there. Knowing my own transition and evolution of my Laurier career, as I mentioned, I went from a pretty quiet and shy nerd in first year to a really, really loud nerd in going into my fifth. So knowing that, I was surprised to understand that, to wake up months into the COVID lockdown and realize just how much I craved the interaction, the being at Laurier in Waterloo, in the heart of the action, being with students, faculty members, and everyone I got to know over a great career, all in one space. You know, waking up and seeing the same 3 people in the same house in Newmarket is nice for a while, but after a while you appreciate a little bit of variety. And so that's where I appreciate the fact that I've taken now close to a year to recharge my batteries after my work with both the student union and the residence department left me in a state of, if I'm being completely honest, mental and social exhaustion. I'd extended my opportunity to give myself to fulfill stated responsibilities, and I could not continue to live in an environment in a residence building where I was concerned that people living in the floors below me were actively speaking out against me, as much as I tried to build bridges and mend whatever fences and rifts may have been developed. That said, having had now that good year to recharge my batteries, get back into schooling, and now sit through class after class, staring at a laptop, I'm ready to get back into the swing of things, next year, to be mixing with people with the union, resident stakeholders, athletics, Greek life, faculty members, all these different stakeholder groups that I've not seen for ages, knowing that I made the opportunity to see people I've not seen for months, going on years now, just honestly fills me with life. And knowing that I would have a good opportunity to as president will keep motivating me. It honestly makes my day, or made my day, perhaps I should say, walking across campus and just seeing a few people I know on my way to classes or to the food court. So knowing I may have an opportunity come this May to meet with so many fresh faces and old faces that I'm really looking forward to reconnect with will give me the motivation I need to stay strong throughout the term of my presidency. It's not the connections.
Thank you very much, candidates. I believe we have time for one more question, one more audience question before we're done for the night. For both candidates again, what extracurricular at Laurier do you believe helped you prepare for this role, prepare for running, prepare for the candidacy the most? We'll start again with Pega. So what extracurricular helped prepare you in running, and why do you think so?
So talking from my experience, I mean, my roles with the Senate have definitely helped, as well as the Board of Governors. Though I can definitely talk more about those roles, especially with my advocacy in those roles. I think that people are a little sick of me talking about only those two. So I can also discuss my roles with Greek life. I am one of the liaisons for Pike as one of the female reps for them. So I've helped them a lot with, you know, just setting up events and philanthropy there. So I understand the needs that they might also have. Further, I've worked alongside MPs campaigns such as Marco Mendocino, who is a Toronto-based MP, and then Bardishager here at Waterloo. So that also gave me a good understanding of, you know, policy and marketing of themselves. So those were some great experiences that I had. Obviously, there's things from my very far past, you know, when I was a lifeguard and an instructor. So I really learned to work alongside teams there. And I think that those are all great experiences that I could really bring in here. I mean, I also did outreach, and that led me to, you know, network with a bunch of different individuals I would not have had a chance to meet at Laurier. So that gave me some more insights as to how Laurier is run. But other than that, yeah, those are the things that I can really mention.
Thank you very much, Pega. Joseph, if you want to finish us off, what extracurricular during your time at Laurier do you think has helped you the most in preparing to run for this role?
Aaron, I think the really boring answers would be the board of directors work, the board of governors, or residents, perhaps, maybe even house council in my first year. Director of finance and administration, this could get a little more boring. But surprisingly enough, I think if I had to give a fresh take on this one, I would say the 2 years I was a bass singer with Hall Capella came in pretty handy. Being able to cut loose with a nice group of folks on Sunday nights to meet in the music building, a building I didn't see very much of, you know, when I was in economics, helped me understand what I was missing at Laurier. And on top of that, you can imagine how much off-the-wall energy a university a cappella ensemble has got to have after a long week of stress. So being able to meet with folks like that is unwind, just be goofy, honestly. I know you might not think me the goofy guy, but sure enough, there was a time. And being able to cut loose in that environment and meet a great group of folks who, interestingly enough, weren't all music students. I was expecting to be the odd one out, but sure enough, we have plenty of BBAs, science kids, we psychology folks. Someone who was one of our best singers actually was in computer science. So being able to just have that one-off grand de-stressor for me was a great way to both understand the difference between professional pursuit and just having fun, and really helped me along in that transition from the shy nerd to the guy who is willing to bust out She Will Be Loved by Maroon 5 on stage in front of a crowded audience. For the record, please don't ask that in the chat. Acoustics are pretty bad in here. So yeah, I've got to cite Hall Capella as one of my best experiences for giving me that extra boost of confidence and stage presence.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much to both the candidates. I'm sure it has been a very long 3 hours for you guys, but you did fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us for today's debate. Thank you for all of your wonderful questions to the people who submitted them in our chat. We really do appreciate you helping to make this such a lively event. For any of the questions, again, I will reiterate that we did not get to today. We will have plenty of opportunities at the open forum on Thursday and the debate next week, next Monday, for them to be asked and answered. So if you guys have any more questions, any follow-up questions you want to ask, please feel free to send them to one of us. I believe we put our social medias in the chat if you guys want to review them before you leave. So to our candidates, thank you again. You were fantastic. It was great to get the chance to talk to you guys. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all more on Thursday. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you
everyone for coming. Thank you, candidates, and thank you, Aaron.
My pleasure.
Thanks,
Take care,
Aaron.
everybody.
Pega, you've both been great.
Have a good one, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So I have saved a copy of the chat log just so that I can get to any questions that weren't.
You want to stop the recording also?
Yeah, I was
Is
going
it
to
recording?
do
Yeah, it is recording it.
Yep.